All right, Kingkillers, we're covering chapters 111 and 112 in this episode. We talk about Kvothe's fate with the Adem as Shehyn casts her judgment. Tempe gets sent away while Kvothe is handed to Vishette the Hammer for training. We also cover what Tempe and Shehyn talked about for so long, more pranks with magic, and pranks me and Tim played in school. So sit back and enjoy. All right, welcome back to the Kingkiller podcast. I'm Dan. Got with me the spud web of podcasting. Tim, what's going on?
Yeah. Is he a Hall of Famer? I'm pretty sure he's
I don't know. It's a little bit easier with basketball because they count like college and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit easier to get into the Basketball Hall of Fame than it is.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I didn't know. They count college? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's some guys that didn't have great NBA
Like
careers,
Ralph
but
Sampson.
had, like, I'm sure like Christian Leitner's almost certainly in the Basketball Hall of Fame.
He was on the Dream Team.
Yeah, he had a great
But-
college career. He did not
Yeah.
make the dream team because of what he did in the NBA. He was
Yeah.
okay in the
Yeah.
NBA. He wasn't like a bad player, but he was not like an elite top tier player.
That's a good question. I wonder if Christian Leitner is in the NBA Hall of Fame. I don't know. Unless you're saying with certainty that he is.
I don't know. I'm assuming that he is because of what he did in college. He had a pretty legendary college career.
So it's a Basketball Hall of Fame. It's not an NBA Hall of Fame.
Correct.
Interesting. I didn't actually did not know that. I thought maybe they separated them,
The more you know.
Yeah, I guess. Well, you didn't really say anything after that. You just did it's like ... afterwards.
Yeah.
Is it just the implication?
Yeah, it's like reading Rainbow, except for the more you know.
Take a look. It's in a book.
Reading Rainbow. And then if you read, the more you know. So there you go.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I guess I'm just accepting these classics of the 80s.
But yeah, so we are going to start off with chapter 111, A Liar and a Thief. And in this chapter...
That's you.
Yeah. Jerk. But yeah, in this chapter, Shehyn decides Kvothe's fate with Tempe and Caesarette.
Again, I mean, I say this a lot, but Rothfuss's writing is so good. It's so great. And we get even more of a feel of how different it is in this world, in terms of how they use language. Because again, their communication with their hand gestures is one thing and not making eye contact and all that. But there wasn't a lot of emphasis, and it gets kind of pointed out here on, so just recently we found out that you'll say a word. Less words is better, basically. Less is more when it comes to their language. But then they also use pauses, which we didn't, I guess it wasn't really as emphasized before. Maybe I guess you could pull it out of things that Tempe did and whatnot, but to actually see it, because now that he's in a room filled with Adem, right? He's the odd man out, so he's really taking it in.
Yeah, it seems like,
cool.
They're very, I don't know, they think a lot before they speak. They try to pick and choose just the right word or few words that, are needed to kind of convey the overall scope of what they mean, except for when they're talking about the Lithani. In that situation, it's don't think, you just the whatever stream of consciousness, almost like, first thing that pops in your head, say that.
It's again a great like motif for Rothfuss to use because it ties in with the sleeping mind. It ties in with a few other emphases that we've gotten before of like just follow the instinct, don't think too much, allow your chi to guide you.
I mean, it does seem like that they're extremely tapped into the sleeping mind, and the Lithani is kind of like a practice system of just your natural instincts, your animal instincts, and it's obviously there's a moral code to it, a component to it as well as like a morality, so it's not completely like an animal instinct side, but it is like coming from that same place of that just you don't think about like you're not sitting there analyzing what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to say. You're not overthinking the thing. You're supposed to just come from the gut, and then if you're attuned to the Lithani, then you're going to speak correctly, and you're going to speak things that align with the Lithani, rather than you trying to puzzle out what the exact right thing to say is. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for whether you just naturally understand it in your core, basically.
It's an interesting point that you mentioned there, because it's not, if it was just animal instinct, then you would just do what you want at all times.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think of the bigger picture, right? What's better for the Adem? Because the way their culture works, you have to think that way, just for their culture to function and the way it functions. But it's a higher idea, which is a really interesting way to like shape a part of society, to where they have this higher like calling that they all adhere to. And it's what holds their whole society together, is like, if you're following that, then I like, again, one of the things I love in this chapter is how he complicates it and he puts it under pressure, because like, it's not just everybody in their society is going to think this way, because you're going to exclude some people, and you're going to let other people in, and that's the ultimate thing that they're faced with here. And you see that some think one way, others think another. His ability to use spinning leaf, I think is what he calls it, right? Spinning leaf.
Yeah.
That, I mean, that saves his ass, right? Because, well, it helps. I'll say that, right?
Yeah, it seems to help tune him into like the sleeping mind, and I think the reason it's the reason why it works is similar to the reason why he's able to hear fire when Master Doll says whatever the word is for the true name of fire. When he speaks that true name of it, Kvothe hears fire, because he's kind of attuned to that sleeping mind. So his sleeping mind is able to kind of give him the answer and put it in his mind. And I think it's a similar type of thing here, is like, even if he doesn't quite understand it, his sleeping mind understands it. So that makes the sleeping mind a little bit more nuanced than just your like animal instinct. It's more thoughtful than just like a natural instinct taking over type of fight or flight type of thing.
It's like guided.
Yeah, but it's got a different, it's different than like your rational thought process working things through, but you just instinctively are able to translate fire, or speak things that align with the Lithani. You're able to kind of intuitively understand the Lithani just by your kind of like the force type of, it's a kind of like a force type of thing, where it's a nebulous term. It's hard to kind of pinpoint anything, but you're able to kind of be in tune with the world when you're in that kind of state.
I think an intuitive subconscious is kind of comes to mind as something that would kind of point at it a little bit. Again, it's nebulous, so you can kind of throw a dart and be like, what comes close? I like the concept. I mean, what Rothfuss does is, when you mention he hears fire, and when you read it, it's like you have to really parse that apart as the reader, because we read fire, that's what Kvothe hears, but the fact that he hears fire, it's not actually what's being said.
Yeah.
So it's really important that he points that out, and then Elkstall's like, well, it's good that you heard that. It's good that you're hearing something, because that tells your mind's translating it itself, which means you're hearing something other people aren't hearing. So that elevates Kvothe's abilities, and it also kind of tells you that he's built for this.
Yeah, and when he's in the woods with Felurian and he sees her name and he sees the name of the wind, when he looks around, he's like, I see and understand the world on a completely different level. So it's not just like this feral state. A lot of times it's kind of almost a feral state that brings up the feelings, but like when the sleeping mind takes over in that situation, it's like he understands the world at its core. And so he sees things from a different perspective. So it's not necessarily like just a complete instinctual, animalistic, unthinking, process. It's like it's almost like a DMT trip where you're just
It's like a
seeing
heightening
things
of
that you're not able
senses.
to see with your just, when you're on your normal thing, just your normal senses, you're just not able to see the world in the way that the sleeping mind's able to see it and process information. So when he goes into spinning leaf, he's able to kind of see the Lethani and understand, even if he can't, you know, internally think of why he understands it and what he gets about it. He's able to kind of pull these pull the answers out through this process from something he can't really explain. Same way, like when he loses sight of the name of the wind, when the feeling goes away, he loses like comprehension of what he felt, all the things he saw, all the vibrancy to the world. He loses that when he loses the access to the sleeping mind. So it's just something. There's a difference between the way your sleeping mind sees the world versus your just normal everyday life. So I think that's why he's able to kind of access the Lethani.
It's almost like in a way like the distractions go away. And when you talk about feral state, like he gets so angry that there's nothing in his world at that moment other than his anger and Ambrose and what the fuck just happened. You know what I'm saying? Like all the distractions are completely gone. So now he can see the world as it is. But it's more, yeah, it's like an elevated sensory experience. Again,
It's like you're
it's really
normally
hard
seeing.
to.
It's like you go around, you're seeing the world in 2D, but then the sleeping mind allows you to see it in 3D.
Blue, blue, blue.
Yeah, blue, blue, blue balls.
That's what. I mean, or almost in a way, my mind kind of goes to what was that Bradley Cooper movie where he takes a pill and he gets fucking addicted to him
Oh,
because
Limitless.
yeah, in a way, it almost kind of feels like I remember the first time somebody told me like the percentage of your brain that you use, and then the idea of being able to unlock the rest. That idea
I don't even.
itself kind of spun me out.
I'm not even sure that that's like completely accurate. I just think it's more of a case of we don't understand how the brain works rather than
Yeah.
we're not using.
Well,
I don't even know what that means. You're not using it. Like,
I more bring it up as a concept
yeah,
because hearing that when you're younger and you hear that concept, you're like, whoa, so what do Yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, there's so many different sensory elements that are controlled by the brain. Yeah, I think it's still, we don't really understand how it's used, let alone like, oh, if you could just have this, it's not a big form of muscle. You're not just like, you're not working out the brain all around it unless you play football. Apparently you're working out your brain
yeah,
a lot more.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
boxing, things like that. Because you're,
But
really hitting that muscle tissue.
it starts off with Shehyn brings Kvothe back to the complex of stone buildings, and Tempe standing out there, shifting nervously from foot to foot. So he did not realize that Shehyn was going to do this. He didn't realize that she was going to go and kind of test Kvothe without him being around, without him having a chance to talk to her. So when he went in to look for her, she was already they kind of just set it up so that she could have some alone time with Kvothe and just give him a little initial testing before she ended up talking to Kvothe and Tempe. She wanted to get her own initial perspective on Kvothe without, like Kvothe knowing who she is or Tempe preparing him or any of that kind of stuff. She wanted to get her own initial perspective on him.
It's good. I mean, it makes sense. It speaks to me, it speaks to their sensibility and character that you would do that because, of course, you would if you want to get like a real look at them or an
Yeah,
understanding of them.
at least it speaks to her. Like I don't think
Yeah.
it's obviously Kvothe and
Well, I guess
a
for
different
me,
perspective in person, but
yeah.
yeah, Shehyn seems to be more thoughtful than some of the other people.
For me, well, I guess yeah. I guess because this is kind of our introduction. If she's the leader, quote unquote, then it kind of, in a way, is going to form your expectation of what their world is like and how they would run it. I still put myself in those positions a lot where I'm just like, for first time reader, what this looks like, what this seems like, because it's kind of important to consider how he wove this together. Now, again, the rereads are still very impactful, so it still layers a lot in as well. But But yeah,
Yeah,
so I mean, Tempe's basically super fucking nervous and very placating. He's like a whipped dog throughout this whole thing. And he very much feels like he did something wrong, which clearly he did something wrong.
why he's just extremely concerned. Obviously, his the punishment is so severe to him that he would
Yeah.
rather them kill him than to just isolate him from the rest of his society. And
Well,
so,
and Kavoth's in a spot as well, and that's in a way that's fucking Tempe's fault. So there's
yeah,
plenty to be nervous about
and Tempe
if he
does,
gives a shit.
yeah, Tempe either doesn't know or just kept it under wraps, didn't tell Kvothe how serious a position he was in. And
Mm-hmm.
so Kvothe is unaware of how precarious his position is. Whereas, I don't know if Tempe knew and just didn't tell Kvothe, but it's one of the two. Either didn't know or didn't tell him, because the situation for Kvothe is at least as severe for Kvothe if they were gonna like just mangle his hands or whatever and eliminate his ability to fight, or they're gonna kill him. That's obviously a severe punishment. It's not.
Yeah.
It's they're not playing around with this shit.
There's an implication within the chapter that might have been what was on the table.
Oh, it was. It was. I mean, they talk about it further, like later on, when they're talking about like sending him away. That's what they tell. That's what Bichette tells him. Well, like we could kill you, or we could hobble you, we could break your, or break your thumbs, or cut your thumbs off, or something like that. Just
Yeah, I remember this horrifying to him.
yeah,
His beautiful hands,
yeah. So I mean, yeah, they take it very seriously. But yeah, and then they go, Shehyn motion for him to follow, and then she sends a boy to go get Kvothe. It's interesting. Like Kvothe seems like not the ideal person to bring into the situation. She seems like she's got a clear bias.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly. I would say you have been mispronouncing her name. It's Car Carrot.
Yeah, Car Carrot. Yeah, I'm gonna say Kvothe because that flows off the tongue better. But yeah, I can see that it is clearly Car Carrot.
But yeah, I guess we get to that a little bit later. But when they're like, they kind of go through the little test, and then like, oh, what do you think? It's like she clearly is like very much against him, very much against Tempe. Doesn't seem like someone who can be a real, fair arbiter.
No, she doesn't seem like she's bending on this. Like there's not room for nuance with her.
Yeah, it doesn't seem well, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, where it's between her and Shehyn, it becomes very clear that there's different schools of thought, and Shehyn is of the school of thought that one can learn the Lethani, or their culture can be open to others being able to be brought into the fold. While, I mean, you can just imagine. Again, it's giving you two people's perspectives, but what you can see with Car Carrot is an example of someone who seems to think, no, keep them all out. They're all stupid savages, and the Lethani's not for them.
Yeah,
and then the way that Shehyn seems to present is the Lethani is so great that it can overpower any savageries. It kind of along those lines, it seems.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting mix, because you would, if with a society that is that isolated, you would think that they would have a big problem with viewing the other people in other societies as inferior to them, which you definitely would get. I mean, there would be a massive tribal nature to these people, but you get it in a couple of different ways. You get like Kvothe, who's just got an animosity for other people, and then someone like Shehyn or Bichette and Tempe, it's more like, yeah, it's not your fault. You guys are just like stupid dogs. There's nothing.
You're like children.
Yeah.
You don't know any better.
Yeah, you don't know better. No one's taught you well.
It also makes a lot of sense, man, because like you said, they are isolated and they're idealists, and they practice what they preach in terms of being idealists, right? I mean, they this is their focus on a daily basis. They sit down and talk about, or at least it seems they sit down and talk about the Lethani. They focus on it. They do their fucking, MMA shit, or they do their fighting and whatnot. and then that's their focus, and then that's what they take out into the world. That's what gives them the resources to send resources back to the world. That's why they have their nice cafeteria with all their food and strawberries and shit.
Yeah, I mean,
it's what holds it all together.
A lot of the aspects of their extreme tribalness lends well to that, that sense of community and not letting outsiders in, has an impact on. I mean, it's obviously their views are on so many things are completely ignorant. The way they view the outside world, same way with like the way Kvothe viewed the Adem coming in. He didn't, when he was ignorant about them, like he didn't understand what made them tick, and like the way they look at how the society functions in other parts of the world. It's a completely ignorant view, but you can understand why they are that way, given their nature and given how they live. They live such an isolated life. You're not going to find a lot of open, culturally diverse, or at least culturally accepting people who live in like extreme isolation. It's just not how humans work.
I would say so, except for the music. That still doesn't. I don't have an answer as to why they view music the way they do.
Well, I mean, it's just like a cultural thing. Like, I mean, because
it's a quirk. It's like
I know, but
where's it come
it's
from?
developed. Well, it's developed off of that. The emotions and the not expressing them on the face and like hiding them. Like when you're singing, how would you do that unemotionally without showing your emotions on your face? And like, I mean, who sees someone like sing who's just like a blank slate on their face? It's just.
That's a good point. Actually, there's a Jerry Seinfeld line where Elaine asks him if he wants to go see Mel Torme, and he's like, I can't watch a man sing a song. He's like, they get emotional, they sway. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, Seinfeld would have made a good Adem.
Which is really funny to think about. Like, I guess it is kind of like that, where it's like, there is a lot of emotion involved, but it depends on the music, obviously, as well. Like in terms of how that. But okay, that's a good answer. That's a good answer to what I just brought up. So that makes sense. I mean, again, that speaks to Rothfuss's abilities, right? He gives you something that's really kind of jarring to have that difference, but then it would be built out of something. So he has a real knack for building a society and then spinning outward how things would end up, right?
Yeah,
how different things would be treated within that society, based on the way that they act, the way that they are, and then
Yeah, I was watching a video with him, and it was a panel from like a Comic-Con from I don't know how many years ago, but it was like him and Martin and Lev Grossman and a couple other people, like the lady that wrote the Outlander series, and then Joe Abercrombie. So they were all talking about their writing process, and one of the things Rothfuss was talking about, like you could get a sense of just kind of how his mind works, is he was talking about how like he went through the process of like doing a map. It's like, okay, so there's a large city here. It's like, what would surround a large city? It's like obviously it'd be a trading post. It'd be a place where trade would go through. And he's like, so how would trade get there? Is like probably be by a river. Where does a river? Where would the river come from? And he just starts walking back from, rivers get to this thing and then this thing and then this. And he's like, so it's just walking it back. It's like a regression of he starts here with, I want to start with this, but then how do I make that so that it makes sense, that everything would all fit together, and he just kind of regresses backward from there. So like if you started with, I want a culture that doesn't like music and sees it as like prostitution, then you could see kind of where you could start working that backwards. And why would they be that way? Okay, maybe it's like the facial expressions and that kind of thing, or a showing of emotions. So maybe they don't show their emotions. Maybe they do like express emotions with hand signals. And, you could see where, I don't know that that's his process, but I'm saying like you could see where that is a way you can kind of tie things together.
Well, and it could be almost in the opposite direction as well, where it's like they communicate through hand gestures.
Yeah,
and facial expressions is inappropriate. So how would they treat the world? How would they look at a trooper, right?
Yeah.
The guy with a loot. Oh, they don't even. It's almost like they don't. You don't hear them talking about the loot. She just takes it off his back and like puts it in his room. Right?
Yeah.
There's no.
No, they eventually let him know.
Yeah.
Like, Tempe should have probably gave him a heads up, but
Tempe's not big on giving heads up.
No,
like,
no, he's got a little bit of flurrying in him.
Yeah, he's not like the best communicator, man.
No. But yeah, and then so they go in, and I like the aspect of where like Tempe doesn't look at him and he just signals profound seriousness, attend. Didn't reassure me that these were the same gestures he had made on the road to Crossing when he thought we were walking into an ambush. His hands, I noticed, were shaking slightly. So, I mean, this is a guy that was not nervous at all about fighting 3 mercenaries in a bar.
Yeah.
Like, he's just sitting there like, here, watch my back. I'm going to go whoop the shit out of these 3 people and just watch my technique and how I do it.
And then you follow that up with Car Carrot showing up and that being the one that pushed him out of the group. It's not looking good. These are bad omens.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely, and Tempe being that nervous would make you a little nervous for what's going to happen. Obviously, Kvothe's not thinking like that, if something bad happens, that something bad's going to happen to him, really. Mm-hmm. Like, he's not anticipating that at this point. But, yeah, he doesn't realize how precarious his position is. But, yeah, and I like the fact that it's like, I waited for an hour, then 2. Because, like, I imagine that, like, Tempe's in there and he's explaining to Shehyn, like, look, they got this crazy method that I didn't expect would work, but they judge who should be, like, a leader based on how hairy their balls are. And you wouldn't think this would be an effective system, but you don't understand. This guy, he was killing guys left and right from 100 feet away, just slicing their throat. He calling down lightning. He went and got with Florian, survived it, came back. And like you don't understand. Like, he tells these hilarious stories. Like, he's got the funniest story you ever heard in your life. This thing's ass falls off, and then like he probably laughed for like 30 minutes straight, just thinking about that story. And so, like, I mean, you can picture exactly how everything went down. But he's like, yeah, man, like, it's something we might want to look into, like hairy genitals, maybe not balls, but just hairy genitals in general as a good way to pick our next leader to replace you. Like, it's just something to think about. It really works. It's really effective. And I think we should train him.
Yeah, it's really funny. And it's kind of embarrassing for me to admit it, but I didn't consider the fact that as he was in there for 2 hours, the type of stats he's dropping on Kvothe.
Yeah.
Like stabbing that body and the lightning and Florian. I mean, that's nuts, man. That's some craziness. And to be hearing those things, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, well, what are we getting into with this kid? Plus, he's a redhead.
Yeah, and
he's got those hairy balls.
Yeah, he obviously tells her too that there was a renta, which is basically like saying that there's like, a sender was there, like whatever whatever renta specifically signifies, whether it's specific to the Chandrian or just like a replacement for something similar to like a demon or an immortal. But Tempe obviously told her about that because she brings it up later on when she tells about starts asking him if he's going to go after Cinder. She lets him know that Tempe had told her that he had a run-in with a renta. So Tempe, obviously, he would have had to have known that there was something up with Cinder, that it was not just a normal dude. Like, he had to have recognized that when he saw him. Or at least from what happened, how the guy just kind of disappeared and that kind of stuff. He either recognized it or he put 2 and 2 together and decided that, that bandit leader, there was something different about him, that he was a renta or whatever, if the specific way they say it.
I wonder if that speaks to Tempe's awareness, or like, how the Adem see the world differently, or if it's that obvious. Because we hear it from Kvothe. And it doesn't sound like he's like, it's not like he was glowing, but the way he moved, and the way he
Well,
acted.
and you saw Martin was panicked over it. He's sitting there praying to Telu when he sees this guy. He's like, he realizes there's something different about this guy, but Tempe realized it at a different level. Like he had some comprehension of what exactly that was. And to the point where, I mean, they got their stories about the Renta and and the stories about the Seven. And so I think they just have a richer history that, as far as like going back to the beginning, they have a better kept amount of information that they pass down to all the people in their community.
Well,
So I think it seems like the Adem just seem to have better information on what happened previously and 5,000 years ago. Not exact information. They still, like, they don't, the name they give for Mere Terrennial is something different, but they have at least better information than most, like information that he can't find anywhere else. So they have a pretty good amount of information.
It seems like they keep it alive through word of mouth, but they also so they reinvigorate it and keep telling those stories. But it also seems like they have respect for it instead of in Kavoth's world, which more mirrors our world. I would think they just look at it as it's fable, it's old, so it's no longer valid, and they just make fun of people that even think about it. Basically, it's children's stories, fairy tales.
Yeah, they're clearly, I mean, they're passing down this information from person to person. So, and if they connect all the way back to the beginning, if the Adem came from the Ruach, and they've been passing down this information for a long time, like they've clearly took it seriously because they've kept it intact enough where when we hear her story, we know that there's a lot of truth to it because it confirms with things that Scarpy said and things that Florian said. Like they those three stories all have alignment with each other.
And that's hugely valid when you consider, for all we know, Shehyn's not an immortal, right?
No, yeah,
Florian and Scarpy are completely different cases.
Yeah, yeah.
So
and so obviously they've kept that information, they've kept the access to it very. They've done a really good job passing it down, where they've kept it largely intact. But yeah, so Tempe tells them about Kvothe's big hairy balls, and then somewhere past the third hour, the door opened and Shehyn waved him inside. And she asked him, how many have you killed? Shehyn asked. Her tone was different than before, preemptory. It was the same tone Tempe used during our discussions of the Lithani. Many, I responded without any hesitation. I might be thick at times, but I know when I'm being tested. How many is many? Not a request for clarification, it was a new question. And killing men, one is many. She nodded slightly. Have you killed men outside of the Lithani? Perhaps. Why do you not say yes or no? Because the Lithani has not always been clear to me. And this is where it starts to kind of go awry for him, because he starts thinking about it and like trying to come up with the right answer rather than just letting an answer come to him. He starts
so far those sound good to me. Those sound like good answers.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's, and why is that? Because the Lithani is not always clear. What makes the Lithani clear? I hesitated, though I knew it wasn't the right thing to do. The words of a teacher? Can one teach the Lithani? I began to gesture uncertainty, then remembered hand talk wasn't appropriate. Perhaps, I said, I cannot. And Tempe shifted slightly in his chair. This wasn't going well. For lack of any other ideas, I took a deep breath, relaxed, and tipped my mind gently into spinning leaf. And then she asked him, like, who knows the Lithani, the wind-blown leaf? Where does the Lithani come from? The same place as laughing. How do you follow the Lithani? How do you follow the moon? So he just goes into this kind of the amorphous just description of these vague descriptions rather than trying to pin it down. He just gives these very broad interpretive descriptions that can be interpreted any number of ways, and so that registers better with them.
There again, though, I would also say these are great answers. I mean, even where does the Lithani come from? The same place as laughing. That is literally what Tempe told him. It's like your stomach.
Yeah.
That's where this is, because the way they look at it is interesting. The mind, the heart, and then the stomach itself. It's like with your gut. So, I mean, they're great, man. I like the windblown leaf answer, especially. It kind of sets the tone of like, oh, we are in a different mind state here.
Yeah.
Like it takes us with us. We get to go with him. It's fucking pretty great.
Although I'm not really sure how the windblown leaf is following the Lethani. I don't really understand that one.
Like kind of, to me, I mean, it immediately makes me think of the Hall of Questioning, the questioning hall or whatever the hell they call that. I always forget. The House of the Wind. It kind of made me think of that, where it's just like you get to see you see the wind in those types of ways. It's letting that guard down, and that's where what made me think of.
Yeah, it's just it's hard to understand like the analogy. Maybe it is he's saying that the windblown leaf understands it because it doesn't resist against its nature. Like the wind just kind of carries it and shows it where to go. Like it takes it where it's going to take it. And the Lethani is something that you shouldn't fight against. You should just let the Lethani take you down the right path and just go with it, even if you don't fully understand it. But yeah, I don't know. It's it's just one of these things where he created a concept that is impossible to definitively nail down exactly what it means. So when you talk about these things, you got to come up with like analogies, and you got to talk around it to kind of get at the edges of what you're trying to describe.
Well, and it's, from what it seems implied here, is that's what they all do.
Yeah.
Right? We don't get to hear it. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember. So I'm starting to think, because you're talking about some of the things that come up next. I'm starting to realize some of it's kind of hazy for me because it's been so long. But I don't remember if we hear other people speaking of the Lethani in such a form. You know what I'm saying? Like where they're being quizzed like this.
There's times they talk about it, yeah. But it's tough. I mean, it's just not something you can pin down. So, I mean, you have to talk about it and these kind of talk around it rather than through it.
I love the way that Rothfuss does describe that he does well, because they don't tell him he does well, right? But that these answers clearly had a much better effect. The pause was a sudden gap in the conversation. It was the empty space of an indrawn breath. I sensed I had said something either very clever or something very stupid, which is pretty cool to consider, because the answers seemed, knowing what we know about him and kind of what the way this was supposed to go and how Spinning Leaf has been effective.
We know the answers were impressive just through the next part. Like she goes like Shehyn, she's like, "What do you say?" Case read had stat like a statue the whole time, expressionless and still. I say, as I said before, Tempe has not us all. He should be cut away. This is the reason we have laws. To ignore law is to erase it. And then Tempe is like, to blindly follow the laws to be a slave. Shehyn gestured sharp rebuke, and Tempe flushed with embarrassment. As for this, Case Red gestured at me, dismissal. He is not of Ademre. At best, he is a fool. At worst, a liar and a thief. And what he said today, Shehyn asked, a dog can bark 3 times without counting. So obviously, the implication there is that what he said was impressive. And then she's like, yeah, well, anybody can, say the right thing 3 times. It doesn't mean that, you understand the Lethani. It's like you can just
get lucky.
Yeah, you got lucky.
Which, by the way, she's not wrong. He is a liar and a thief. So
yeah,
she's not wrong about that, either. That's not necessarily his intentions now. No. But yeah. I like that pitting, because we know how overall the overarching story. It's a nice sort of twist of irony.
And then,
I did want to mention, in case we don't go back to it, the part about the punctuation, and Ademic is a language that says as much with silence as with words. There's a pregnant pause, a polite pause, a confused pause. There's a pause that implies much, a pause that apologizes, a pause that adds emphasis. And then he mentions this pause. The pause that came after he says, "How do you follow the moon?" was a sudden gap in the conversation. It was the empty space of indrawn breath, which gives us that sense that, yeah, he either shocked the shit out of him by saying something grossly inappropriate, which didn't happen, which we know that even without having to read on, or he said something that was very effective, very clever. That's such a great way to be able to do that on Rothfuss' part. But I also like that idea of what a pause does within language. I mean, he even does it in music. I mean, it like reminds me of like Thelonious Monk or something, where you use the pauses to add emphasis. It's hard to do that in a book, man. We're not in the scene, right? So to be able to say a beat, you can't really do that. So you have to imply it or describe it and use sort of metaphors and analogies. But it's great. I mean, these are subtle little things that Rothfuss does in these chapters that might not blow people's nips off, but they do for me. Pretty great. Nips blown.
Your nips are full blown off.
I wear nip guards when I read nowadays because I'm
smart.
because you just never know when it can come.
Yeah, you do never know. That's why I always have my nips taped up. Always prepared. Stay ready. You don't have to get ready.
The bedpan as well. Go back to what we talked about earlier.
Bedpan everywhere I go. And then Shehyn kind of chastises Tempe. She's like, tells him that for speaking out of his turn, he doesn't get a chance to speak on his own behalf. But then she's like, Shehyn drew a deep breath and let it out slowly. The Khatan and the Lithani are what make us Ademre, she said. There's no way a barbarian can know of the Khatan. Both Tempe and Kate stirred, but she held up a hand. At the same time, to destroy one who has understanding of the Lithani is not correct. The Lithani does not destroy itself. She said, destroy very casually. I hoped it might be a mistake. I hoped I might be mistaken as the true meaning of the Ademic word. She's not. They were 100%. One of the contemplation is like, do they kill him? And
which is, talk about increasing the stakes. Although you kind of already know that it's not as in limbo as it was, as we read throughout the chapter. We've gotten to this point, but there's that balance, man, because we don't really know. Because initially it goes bad, and it's tipping a little bit better, and then you find out, oh, they might kill him. You're like, oh shit, like it was that dire. Holy fuck, you may not get out of here, dude.
Yeah.
And then once you find out
that right there, once she says destroy, then you realize that, the first time you're going through it, you realize the stakes are much higher for Kvothe than they are for Tempe. Even though for Tempe, getting cut away is worse, Kvothe would be perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that would have been his life before now.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
No big deal.
I mean, that's not like much of a threat to him. But like
I give it
cutting
a
his
shot.
hands, like cutting his thumbs off or whatever, crippling his hands,
Uh-huh.
like cutting his, pinky finger off, those kind of things. Like, be like, no, that's devastating for him.
But and again, and then once we realize he can't fight these people, like, well, I mean, he's got his abilities, and you can see what he can do when he's tested. But I mean, in physical,
he's in
physical altercation. He's screwed.
It seems like it would be if they're gonna attack Kvothe, they better do it quick, because if he got pissed and that sleeping mind took over in that area where he would have like the control of the wind, and he could just roll through and just destroy them all with a tornado and just completely wipe out their whole city.
I'm thinking he picks up that tree using the force and just starts slinging blades at everybody.
Yeah, tossing those leaves, straight at everybody.
He just got what he called throwing stars. He got throwing stars just launching all over the.
Or like, when he thinks about, like, when he gets up by the tree and he thinks about peeing on it, like, instead he calls the name of the wind and he pees into the wind and then sprays it at everybody.
I love that idea. I mean, we talked about that a while back. Where's all the pranks, man? Where's all the pranks? He just
it's
great
raining.
Golden.
Wait a minute. It's not rain.
The chapter title, The Golden Shower, and it ends up being part of his mystique and his legend, the Great Golden Shower.
Can you imagine if he did that in book 3? Like, one of the things he puts in there is like he has a chapter titled "The Golden Shower," and it's literally Kvothe pees into the wind and uses the wind name of the wind to make it spray everybody with his piss. It's like, what? Like, you got this masterpiece, and then you just like have all of a sudden you have Kvothe pissing on people.
Yeah, maybe when he gets back, so he gets real serious, right? But then when he gets back to the university, he starts to realize, you know what? I could have been doing antics all along.
Yeah,
I
could have been pranking the shit out of people. I got all these powers that are tailor made for pranks. And spending all this time trying to think about revenge, I'm not even thinking about how funny I could be.
You know what? I'm cool with a book that is literally just him and Elodin going back and forth and trying to top one another.
Yeah. Just keeps
pranking kids at the university.
It would just keep escalating to the point of complete danger. Yeah. They're like threatening to destroy the fabric of the world because of their escalating pranks.
I love it. Him gets killed in the he's got to get taken out in the
yeah, that's one of the pranks. Like one of them kills him and tries to get the other one blamed for it.
Throw him down those stairs.
It's like, oh, he almost got me. He almost got me thrown up, strung up by the iron law. What a hilarious prank.
Got him.
Then Shehyn goes, there are those who might say, this one has enough. Do not teach him the Lithani, because whoever has knowledge of the Lithani overcomes all things. Shehyn gave a severe look to Kate, but I am not one who would say that. I think the world would be better if more were of the Lithani. For while it brings power, the Lithani also brings wisdom in the use of power. Which, considering how they view it as kind of a moral system, yeah, you would think this would be something that they would be wanting to go around and spread that information.
Mm-hmm.
Spread this knowledge of this kind of, it's almost their religion, almost as the Lithani. It's got a very religious tone to it. So you think they would be out there spreading that in the world, but they hold it very tight.
It's an interesting sort of conundrum that happens from, I think that happens from ethos is some people, I need to give this to everyone. This has made such a difference in my life that everyone should appreciate this. And, I need to spread the word, so to speak. And others are like, fuck everybody but us, because I know what they don't know and they don't know. So they're stupid. And then, they basically cut themselves off and isolate the world because none of them are as great as we are. You know what I'm saying? So it's like yeah. I mean, there's different ways to cut it, and there's different personalities in people, man. It's just how different people, are they look at things differently. So yeah, and I also think
it's like the difference between people who will explain an inside joke and people like me who will refuse to explain it.
Well, and I would also say in the case of Car Carrot here, she also just doesn't seem to like Tempe. She seems real butthurt over what he did, and I don't think she's going to back down and be. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting.
I don't necessarily think it's directed squarely at Tempe. I think she hates others. Like I think she hates others, and then so seeing someone who is doesn't have that animosity and then is explaining their secrets to him, I think that's her issue. I don't necessarily think that this is like a grudge against Tempe. It seems very much she's got a major freaking problem with outsiders.
Well, but so okay, then maybe not just grudge. Let's say maybe she didn't think this before, but now she thinks Tempe's stupid for doing what he did. Right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Now, yeah, but I think that's it. Is she hates outsiders so much that when Tempe does this, that now makes him forever. He's a piece of shit, garbage person for doing that. And so, I mean, it's one of those things you see it in just cultures that where there's racism to the extent where marriages outside your own race, like there's parents that would disown you, and where everybody in that society would kind of disown you for going outside of your own race and that kind of stuff. So you see that kind of animosity, and I think that's kind of where she's coming from, is she's got that kind of hatred.
Well, and that's okay, but yeah, that blind hatred is stupid to the effect of she's not giving Tempe the benefit of the doubt in terms of who Kvothe is. Kvothe shares the stat card is one thing, but it's also he has conversations with him. He sees him on a daily basis. They talk about how they view the world. All those conversations they have as they're walking around. It's not like Tempe's just willing to do this with anybody, right?
Yeah,
Kvothe's a pretty impressive dude.
Her hatred's obviously irrational. It's not her. There's no, like, you don't look at what K-Surette's, how she reacts to the situation and think like, well, she had some good points. It's like, no, she's an irrational idiot and she's acting like a psychopath.
I'm always trying to give some benefit of the doubt just to the effect of why people would be this way, but frankly, again, as I mentioned before, people are different in our world. Some people,
she had a
very clear cut.
She probably had bad parents, and she's had bad experiences where outsiders killed her mom, or
she tried to
did something to her, or someone gave her a wet willy, and she just never got over it.
Wet willy? I'd say you'd have to go as far as like she got her head dunked in a toilet, and that was the episode. She never got over.
Some guy comes up to her at a bar, gives her a wet willy, and then she just annihilates everybody in that town. She kills everybody for it.
Jeez. That's how she does not like wet things in her ear.
No, she really had a problem. Yeah, she got her ear. She's got gets real bad earaches, so she's got a real problem with her ears. And someone made the mistake of giving her a wet willy. She's never let it go.
I mean, it's worse than a loopy, but I like the idea of simple things like that are not that big a deal. So somebody gives her a loopy and she just loses it.
What's a loopy?
The whole time, where they pull, your shoes, the bottom loop. You pull that as hard as you can. So now they have to. It is an asshole move because now you have to relace the whole shoe. But yeah, one of the things I used to love to do is like when we go to McDonald's and have the whole tray with all the food, like you and your friends and shit, and I would grab the straws that were still wrapped and put them into the cup, and you know how the sharpness of the cup that holds the straw in place, it would rip to shreds. The paper, so they'd have to take the lid off, then get the paper out, then undo the straw. Like it was a whole pain in the ass. And it cracked me up every time. I used to love doing it.
The one that was that's good is getting people with the glass bottles, like in beer bottles, and like hitting the top of their beer bottle with the bottom of yours.
Sprays out.
Yeah. So it foams up, sprays the fuck out on them. That's
worse.
One.
That's worse than my straw, because the straw is just like, you got to do all this bullshit, but at least you didn't lose a bunch of beer.
Yeah, they have to react quickly and start chugging that beer because it's going to foam over. So they're drinking at a much quicker pace than they anticipated.
I guess you can say that. Like, just trying to get the party going, man. Yeah. Trying to get some drinks in you, man.
It's just a drinking game.
Helping you out.
It's a fun drinking game I've made up.
Remember once we deal with the mess.
We lean towards that kind of personality too, of fucking with people. Like I remember like one kid we went to high school with, he would every day, he would buy like a bunch of cookies for lunch. And then he had like this routine, buy the same thing every day, set his tray down. Then he would go get a slushie or get like a couple slushies. Like his parents would give him a ridiculous amount of money for lunch every day. Give him it was like $5 and they'd give him like $20 a day. And one day he goes walking up there. We ate all his cookies and then took his tray up. It's such an asshole move, but we thought it was so fucking funny. He was so mad too, and then he was so mad that it was that much funnier that we couldn't stop laughing about it. And like we were good friends with the guy, so I mean it wasn't like sweating like some kid we were picking on. It was our friend.
If I remember, I was a part of this, right?
Yeah, me and you ate his cookies and then took his tray up.
I didn't remember him getting mad. That's the thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that kid, yeah.
I thought he came back, he just looked around like confused and then just kind of did his slushy thing and then moved on with his life. There
was another, I might even been the same guy. Me and him had lockers that were one apart, but we had the same exact locker code. And so me and you,
Oh, I remember.
he would have to take
Shit.
the bus home and from school, and we would stand by his locker and we're like, as soon as you leave, we're gonna jam as much shit into your locker as we can get. And he had to catch the bus, so there was nothing he could do about it. And we would just stand there, and then he would have to come to school the next day, and his locker would be jammed. He'd have to get like a janitor to open his locker because we would just take all these books and paper and just slam them in there, just fill his locker up. So janitor would open it up and everything would fall out.
So, dude, I so remember. I remember stealing a lot of shit from the library just to I put projectors.
Yeah.
Like literal the film, the reel to reels. I put those
we put stuff in there they would open it up and be like, "What are you doing, man?" It's not me, I'm telling you.
The reason why this is so funny to me isn't that we did it. I genuinely like this guy. Like
we were having fun. Like he's not, I mean, he wasn't taking it. And, you know, we had that kind of friendship where he wasn't taking it personally, like we're like attacking him. It was just funny. And that's why, you know, he's not telling on us or anything like that, because we were just messing with each other.
That is really funny though, man. Like, but this shit could get him in trouble. I mean, I'm taking stuff you're not supposed to take out of the library and shoving it in there.
Yeah. That's what made it funny, though. You got to have a little bit of danger to the situation for it to be funny.
Man, I haven't thought about that in so long.
Yeah. Unsurprisingly, great. Me and Tim had a bunch of classes together our freshman year. We never had another class together the rest of high school.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah.
They caught on real quick.
In fact, I did not. I think I maybe had like one class other than like gym. I had like one class with a friend the rest of my high school. Like they completely isolated me from everybody. Where it was like, this is not an accident. Like we all take the same exact classes. Like how am I never in a class with anybody I'm friends with? It's like, this is clearly revenge for freshman year.
Yeah, they're very, they get together on that shit.
Apparently. Yeah.
That's a good point.
I mean, we were terrors. Like we super glued a teacher's. She had these totem poles in the back of her room. She was mean and super annoying. She hated us.
Real
because,
pretentious, like though, too, dude. Like she just sucked. She
hated us because the first day she had everybody sit in a circle and talk about, you know, who they admired most. And everybody's like, my mom, my dad, my mom, my dad. And I said, you. And then I hammed it up. I was like, you know, he's just so cool. He's got so many friends, and like he always knows the right thing to say. And I was just mocking the shit out of the whole thing. And so she never let that go. She never let that go that I mocked her.
Yeah, well, and she brought up that whole situation. Again, that's why I said she's pretentious. She loved to be I'm so influential, because she talked about that. Like we had like a card where you wrote something down on it, and she was like, there are people that were in this class and 30 years later or something, they found them and they still had that card with those nice things someone said about them. It's like, dude, what the fuck? Yeah, she was a goofball, and she hated us. She had us sitting in opposite corners of the room. Well, the other guy that was in that class too.
Yeah,
that
he had to sit in one corner. Like,
and I never had a class
us in 3 of the corners.
I never had another class with him either.
Yeah,
so these were
I didn't either. But
it's so funny. But that was like the first
one thing.
Week.
When we super glued all her stuff to the ground, that was the one thing we didn't get caught on. Like she thought it was another class. She even said, like, she came back the next day and she's like, I know it wasn't anyone in this class that did it. And me and you are like fucking dying laughing.
That was such a great moment.
Like, you know it for sure. Because I'm fairly certain I did that.
That was one of the things that I remember, like, as doing it, it's like, man, I could get in trouble for this, but this is fun and I don't care. It's really hilarious. Yeah. And yeah, the idea of like coming back in and then just immediately being told, I know it wasn't you. Like, fantastic. Yeah. All this relief. Woo. And then also just how hilarious it is. Like, I feel bad for the kids that are going to be blamed for this, but yeah, it's still funny.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna own up to it. Fuck that noise.
That whole freshman year, that really set the teachers against me.
Yeah, it set the tone. That's for sure. Yeah, because we had that English class that year too.
Yeah. Right. And I'll give the audience a funny story there. There's I gave Tim one day gets like I get to school and early and I'm supposed to let him copy this homework assignment. It's this big book report, bunch of questions, and he doesn't show up early. He shows up on time, and so he's like, I give it to him. I'm like, how are you going to get it back to me? He's like, oh, don't worry, I got it. I'll get it back to you. And I'm like, I don't know how you're going to do this. Like, and again, this is a teacher that sat us in opposite corners of the room. And so he copies the stuff during the announcements in the morning. And then immediately the teacher, which I knew she would do, immediately she goes, pass up your assignments to the front of the class. And Tim stands up, walks right in front of her, walks to the other side of the room, and then just hands it to me. Just like holds it out and hands it to me. And I'm just like looking at him like, that was your plan? That was your idea? I was like, you should have just kept it and passed it up with yours. At least that, like, she could have thought something was weird why ours were together. But she clearly knows we cheated when you
really
walked
funny,
right in front of her.
I had no plan at all. I was just like, well, I'll just do it during announcements. And then when she said it, I was just like, oh, wait, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. So that's what I did.
Ended up,
I was like, well, fuck it.
She appreciated my lie, I think. And because I came up with a better lie, she like separated us. And then she asked me what happened. And I said, well, you said we could work together. So Tim would come over to my house and we just did, wrote all the answers on my paper. So he was just copying them over. It's like, that's why he walked up right in front of you, because we didn't think we were doing anything wrong. You said we could work together.
It's pretty good.
And that was a good lie. Then she asked you, and your answer was really bad. And she was like, you get a 0, and I got all full credit. Like,
I don't know what my answer was.
I don't either. I know, like, when I heard it, I was like, wow, you're not good at the making up bullshit on the spot. That was a really bad one.
I hope it was like weird. I don't know. What do you mean?
Weird. I don't know.
I didn't walk. I
don't even remember doing that. Are you sure that was me?
I don't know what you're talking about. That just deny it ever happened?
Yeah. Oh man, good times.
Yeah.
Then we get Shehyn decides he should be taught. She says, I think Shehyn said at last it is possible Tempe did not make a mistake. Said this seemed a long way from a ringing endorsement, but from the sudden stiffness in Case Red's back and Tempe's slow, relieved exhaltation or exhalation. Is that how you say that word? Exhalation?
Yeah, exhalation, yeah.
Yeah. I guessed it was the news we were hoping for. And I will give him to Vachette, Shehyn said. Tempe went motionless. Case Red made a gesture of approval, wide as a madman's smile.
Shit.
Sets that ominous tone for Vachette.
Well, that's a horrible sign.
Yeah, and then Tempe
way against this, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, all right, I like where you're going."
Yeah, Tempe's voice was strained. You will give him to the hammer? His hands flickered respect, negation, respect. Shehyn got to her feet, signaling an end to the discussion. Who better? The hammer will show if he is iron worth striking. I stood politely near my chair. All the fight seemed to have left Tempe, and his gestures were a steady rhythm of agreement and respect. So Tempe goes and starts talking to Shehyn and is kind of bowing and scraping. And then when I like the fact that he's doing it while Shehyn and him are talking, Keseret and Kvothe are mean mugging each other, and then she's making a series of small gestures that are clearly taunts, and then sounds like he gives her the middle finger.
I think she called him a butt face is what happened.
Yeah,
is what it seemed like. And then it sounds like he flicks her off, and that's actually more than once. I want to say one time in book 1.
There was like one where like it was like Will held all his fingers down except for his thumb, and middle finger were out or something like that. I mean, the way they described it was like, so he gave him the middle finger. Like there's the middle finger in this world.
Yeah, sounds like they do that. They do wherever that came
or
from.
It's like the Friends where he's like sitting there doing the neck thing that they would do, whatever. They would do like the fish neck.
That's so strange.
Yeah,
they did one with elbows clapping
against
one another. I don't remember the other one. Was the other one something?
They would do like one where they would like do like this like fish thing, like something like like little fish gills on their neck or something with their hands. It was weird. It's funny. I remember laughing at how ridiculous it was. Anytime you go over the top ridiculous, if you haven't noticed, I'm a fan of over the top ridiculousness that is in context like
you keep
super
that under
weird.
under wraps pretty well.
But yeah, and then so Tempe brings him into the lunch hall, and he was like, Kvothe, like, despite my expectations, this dining hall didn't resemble the mess at the university in the least. It was quieter for one thing, and the food was far better. So, like, they make loot. Like, you get
Sounds
the
like it,
sense
yeah.
of, like, even though they're very frugal, but the wealth that they spend, they seem to have an extravagant amount as far as what they can afford when they need heating and that kind of thing. They're able to produce the more than just the necessities of life. They live in comfort, even though they're not living like a lavish lifestyle where it's, ostentatious. It's very muted, but with the heating systems that they have in their house, that would be massively expensive. They're eating really good food all the time, and they're eating a lot, eating 3 square meals a day and eating really good food, and they just seem to have a lot of money coming in that he realizes the more it goes on.
Yeah, I think what probably does help there as well is it does seem like they are frugal. It's not lavish, like you said. Also, it's not a lavish lifestyle. It's the bare necessities, but they, well, it's not bare. It's the necessities, but the necessities seem to be in abundance. Which
Yeah.
I mean is kind of surprising. Which when you read it, it's like, oh, well, that's kind of, I don't know why. If for whatever reason, I just didn't. It surprised me, like having salt boxes. And I guess part of that is because it's coming from Kvothe also, and we've read Kvothe's life where it's like so much of his life there's not abundance. Period.
Yeah.
Right. It's extremely it's an extreme difference when he's able to get meals at the cafeteria. It's fucking
Yeah.
amazing. But even with the mayor, it's like, well, they're not warm. It's cold food.
Yeah.
So now he's getting some fresh, warm food.
Yeah. He's getting hooked up. And I like to, you start to get a little bit of the culture where everybody is sitting in there. It's quiet. Everybody's kind of talking at a low tone, almost to like a whisper, but then they're all like flashing their hand signs. So it'd be weird going into that environment. Like just because you'd expect like a bustling, loud atmosphere with a bunch of people, and with them it's all just quiet and hand flickering movements where it would be a weird experience being an outsider in that situation.
Yeah, it's funny to picture like the like emotional gossip. You know what I mean? Like because they're like sitting with friends at lunch. They're not kids,
Yeah.
but still, I mean, I guess it's
And
a mixture of a bunch of ages, but
it's got to be gross for them. Like, he's like, none of them stared at me, but they were looking. A lot of attention was being paid to my hair, which was understandable. There were 50 sandy heads in the room, a few darker, a few lighter or gray with age. I stood out like a single burning candle. It's like, that's kind of, I mean, you're sitting around, you got, all these good Lathani following people, and then you got this soulless ginger comes in eating in front of them.
jeez.
It's got to be a little gross.
Oh wait, it's gross for them to be
Yeah.
looking at him. Oh,
Yeah.
for him to be in the room.
Yeah. Just flaunting
It sounds like
his savagery.
Well, it gets mentioned a few times when he's sitting there waiting. Everybody keeps looking at his head. They keep walking by and looking at his hair. So he seems to that's getting him more attention here than even typical. Although it is kind of always something.
I do that anytime a redhead is in the vicinity of me. I stare at them the whole time, keep them in my eyesight. You never know what they're going to do.
Jesus, it's make people very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Can you imagine just constantly treating redheads like they're just like the enemy and like they cannot be trusted at all? Follow them around everywhere they go, like keeping an eye on them. I see you, man. I see what you're doing.
Such a strange, like, choice.
Be a weird thing to have
distrust.
like a ton of animosity towards.
Yeah, just like yeah. There's this ingrained distrust. It's like, damn, dude, where did this come from? Somebody wronged you.
some redhead stole a GI Joe when I was like 5. I've never let it go.
It's still not very rational. That was one guy, it's one dude.
But yeah, and then we get with no conversation to slow things. I finished quickly. When my plate was empty, Tempe quit pretending to eat and led us away. I could feel dozens of eyes on my back as we left the room. And he takes him to a room where his loot and travel sack were, and they'd taken his sword. But then he tells him, "You're gonna have another teacher. Do your best. Be civilized. Your teacher will decide much. Regret, you will not see me." So Tempe's not going to be around. They're going to separate them from each other and not going to be allowed to see each other until he's done.
I like
to be very uncomfortable. You just got brought into a society. And the first second you get there, they're talking about like, maybe we shouldn't destroy him. And you're like, whoa, hold on. Like, let's back up here. What are you talking about here?
Yeah, that's very rough. Already you're the outsider. Now you don't have even a single alliance with anyone. Yeah, it's rough. I remember, these are the things I definitely remember, is that it's really rough going in the beginning because, he's treated as poorly. Well, again, he's fed, he sleeps, he's got shelter, so he's not being tortured. But still pretty
Shehyn seems cool, and then Vachette warms up to him pretty quickly. Like the initial meeting is obviously rough, whips the shit out of him. But then after that, they, it seemed they become friends pretty quickly. And then he meets the little girl and Celine, and then Pentha. And so, he starts to build up some kind of friendships where people start treating him decently. But he's isolated. He's an outsider, and he's in a dangerous situation.
When he does consistently also still have enemies, even when he starts to make those friends, he still has them. So, but
yeah, he didn't really once Kate Surratt was giving him some mean mugging him and throwing some gang signs up at him, flipping her off was probably not the way to get her to change her mind on you.
Yeah, probably not.
I would be the same way if someone was coming at me with anger and animosity, and I've never done anything to them.
I've never met this person.
Yourself. Who are you?
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely be that way, where it's like, you get the fuck away from me, man.
Yeah. But and then it was, he was obviously troubled, but I couldn't think of anything to say that might assure him. Instead, I gave him a comforting hug, which he seemed to appreciate. Then he turned and left without another word. Inside my room, I undressed and laid on the bed. It seems like I should say I tossed and turned, nervous about what was to come, but the simple truth is that I was exhausted and slept like a happy baby at his mother's breast.
I guess he deserves to sleep.
Yeah, I mean,
best you can do.
It's not quite his introduction to Tarbean. That was a little bit rougher, but
yeah.
He doesn't have super quality openings to his introductions to new environments. He pretty much gets kind of locked in a room after getting to Severin. With the university, gets into it with him right away. Gets brought up on the horns.
Florian, he does okay.
What?
Florian, he does okay.
Well, she almost killed him. And the opening, he had to fight for his life, but got to have sex for the first time. So, you win some, you lose some.
I think he likes it. I think he likes I mean, everywhere he
goes. That
would
be funny is now he's got a thing where he's he's got to be choked almost to death every time he has sex, because his first time was with Florian and he almost died.
Wow. That's how these fetishes build up, huh?
Yeah.
Either that or he's got to get hit with a fucking
age too. He's 16
sword.
where something like that would have a massive imprint on him where it lasts forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's first time, right? And then, the next time it's, in a world where people beat the shit out of him. So
chasing that high of how great it was with Florian, and then he's misinterpreting what made it great, thinking it was the almost death.
Well, maybe that is what makes. I've never done it. I've never taken it to that level.
No, I don't think I don't think I would enhance things for me. I'm not a fan of.
It doesn't seem erogenous.
Death.
Yeah, it seems. I would just be worried Like, this is. I don't think. I think it would take me in a different direction. Let's say that. I don't think it's going to make it more exciting.
I can promise, like, if there's ever a story like of Dan died of what do they call it? Auto asphyxiation. Yeah,
or whatever.
If there's ever a story of that, that definitely did not happen by me. Someone murdered me. It's 100% a murder.
I feel like you're just covering your tracks right now.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's smart, isn't it? I've had a few close calls.
I don't want to be remembered like Robin Williams. I want to be remembered for the good things.
Getting out ahead of this story.
For David Carradine too, man. The list.
Oh man. All right, that's all I got on that chapter.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so chapter 112 is titled The Hammer, and in this one, Kvothe meets Vashette. She whips the shit out of him, and then when he presents her with a big stick or a big testing sword, and he tests her, she pulls back on it, and he's able to start kind of working his way in with her.
Pretty good move.
Yeah.
On Kvothe's part, putting 2 and 2 together. Yeah, I like the way that plays out. Pretty good. I guess we also get a little piece. I don't remember if we heard much about this before, but about how windy it is there.
Yeah.
Right,
well, I mean, that's why they build like none of the houses are out in the open.
Yeah, they're like built into the hills and shit. Yeah, I guess they kind of pointed that out.
Built into the mountain. But yeah, and then, so it's like, I sat in a tiny park composed of nothing more than 2 smooth stone benches, a handful of trees, and a small path running through the long grass. You could walk from one edge to the other in a minute. There were cliffs close on 2 sides, sheltering it from the wind. Not out of the wind, mind you. There didn't seem to be anywhere in all of Heart entirely out of the wind, which makes it a really good place for naming.
Yeah.
But you're on kind of a wild edge, like Elodin talked about, where it's kind of a wild area. It's an untamed area. And so I think that's significant that he's able to gain access and start to take that next step in his naming ability once he's here. Once he discovers Spinning Leaf and he's here, he kind of starts taking that next step in the evolution of his naming. I think that's significant to kind of understanding what is up with the Adem, why they're better fighters, why the women might be better fighters than the men. And, they're explaining like the swords, how they don't seem to break or be marred. They just kind of maintain. And then like the naming prowess of their naming process, when they go and you get your name, you get your sword, and the rituals, and their training ground is by a gravestone. Got the 99 stories. You got the story about the Chandrian. So I think there's significance to all that, and is pointing to the Adem being a very old society that has been around for a long, long time. Even though the rest of the world doesn't know a lot about them, I think that's because of their isolation. But I think they've been around, passing stories down for a long, long time.
It does. Well, one thing that Kvothe does have in common with that is he is a traditionalist, very much so. Like, he respects tradition of stories, and it's always 3 things, and all of those things. What came to mind in the moment where you're reading that part, or you mentioned about this being a wild place. Do you remember what some of the things Elodin said to Kvothe when he was on the bridge with him about go find
an edge? He's like asked him, do you know why this is a good spot?
Yeah.
And he's like, because it's an edge or something like that. It's like, it's basically, it's a wild area, a dangerous area. It's an untamed area.
But I thought he also mentioned, like, when he knew Kvothe was leaving, and I thought he gave him like some sort of like instruction, sort of, where it was like go
to the edge of the map or something like that. And he's like, because like when he gets back,
because that's kind of what he does.
You really did go to the edge of the map.
Yeah. Because I mean that is kind of what he does. It's so he is in a wild place, but he's also near like the edge of things. So he's out there. He's doing it. He's doing what was instructed of him. And I guess
Because
again, that coming from a Loden is meaningful because Loden's tapped into shit.
yeah, and
He
why
knows
why
his
would the
history.
Adem still be there? Like it does not seem to be like in a hospitable living environment.
Well, and
So
it's not real
why are they still there? They're
practical.
wealthy.
Well,
They
it's
got
not. It's
wealth.
it's also not very practical if the sustainability of their culture is we need to send guys out to go do jobs in all these places. Well, they're all far as shit, it
Yeah.
seems. So that's not real practical to that aspect. So yeah, it does seem like there's definitely more going there. I don't know. I don't know
Obviously,
exactly
they
what
want to
that
be
looks like.
away. They want to be away from everybody else, but it's a big world. Like, is that really like the only spot? I think because of the naming aspect and the perfect step. Kvothe feeling like he's taking the perfect step when he's called after sleeping mind takes over and he names the wind. He feels like he's moving like Shehyn. I think those are all significant and pointing to the fact that they probably chose this place specifically. And with the tree and with the greystone by the training area, I think they have. And you think about just the things that they told Kvothe, like the 99 stories, and then the history of the sword, and the story that she tells about the Chandrian. I imagine that they're not fully divulging most of what they know to Kvothe. So I'm guessing that they probably have a pretty rich understanding of the previous generations of the world, and they probably have a good grasp of why they pick this specific place and why they stay there in a
So
place that's not very hospitable. And so you would think that there's got to be something significant that that would tie into their fighting ability and the Lithani and all that kind of stuff. That there's a reason that's probably, especially with how central the Lithani is to their lifestyle. You would think that they probably chose this specific place has something to do with the Lithani and the sleeping mind and the name of the wind and the edge and that kind of the gray stones and the tree and all that stuff's all tied together.
I wonder then. So it's a place where people can be more adept in taking on these powers, or they can be more. It's more likely that they can get, because when you think about like the Hall of the Wind, right, and places that like where Elodin's like, this is a good place for watching, like those types of things, it can tip a mind into being able to see things that they can't see otherwise, right? Or
But
that,
yeah, and you
or
think about it
they're
like,
more likely to see it in those areas.
yeah, and like Elodin, when he's sitting there, he's kind of like in a meditative state when he's sitting on those. He knows the name of the wind, but he likes to sit there, kind of meditate on it, and just like kind of live with it. And it seems like if you're in an environment like the like Loden likes to go and visit there, if you lived in that environment, you just lived in a place that was like that, the Hall of the Wind, you lived in a place that you had that just, it's a wild area where you would have access to that magic. It's a place where it's easier to tap into that,
Mm-hmm.
into the sleeping mind, that by living there and working out there and training there and meditating there, that it would change you. It would have an impact on your training and all those kind of things, where you would be training in a way where you have access to the sleeping mind, so it enhances things.
And it kind of almost makes me wonder if there something in the wind, is there something in the water, is there something in the air, in this area? Like, is there something literally in this part of the world that encourages those abilities? Like that enhances those abilities. The culture is huge because obviously they're all focused on it. So all those minds focusing together, that's going to create better fighter. It's not just that they're good fighters though; it's that they have this speed and the ability to those perfect steps, right? I mean, yeah, that's training, but there seems to be more to it than that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So and like Kavos walk to the tree, right? I mean, that seems to be there's more to it than just like, oh, I picked it up in training, right?
Yeah.
It's not like that. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's that old bloodline. I mean, there seems to be this thing that is in Kvothe that he respects tradition, who his parents were, how he's lived his life, all the things that he's picked up, all the things he's learned, that he then gets to incorporate these abilities that others just don't have access to. You also have, it seems, that some of that in people in the Ademre, right? And Elodin has some of that. So it's, I guess it's the, I don't know. It's those experiences that, I don't know. So when I say that bloodline, where I was going with that is, if they're as old as the world is, their culture is as old as the world is, then they're the inheritors of this, you know. So they would be more tapped into it. So they would
Yeah,
have abilities that
and
others in the world don't.
they're very isolated. I mean, it could be that it's a specific purpose too. Like they don't want to dilute those bloodlines that tie back to the Ruach or something along those lines. But it seems like there's more to the story than I don't believe that the answer is simply going to be like a Batman type of thing where he goes and learns special you know special karate or jujitsu or whatever from the League of Assassins, and that's why he can go and kick the shit out of everybody. Because I mean, that doesn't make any sense. It's not realistic at all. Like, I mean, you're not just gonna go and fucking train and become the greatest. Like even the best MMA fighter in the world. If he's not like just a absolute giant, he's still you get 8-on-1. You're getting overwhelmed. I mean, you run into numbers and you can have all the training in the world, but you only got 2 fists and 2 feet. So, if you're fighting 4 or 5 dudes, you're going to be in trouble if they all come at you at the same time. They're going to take you to the ground and beat the shit out of you.
Unless you have a lightning tree.
Yeah. So,
Right.
but when you're talking about a fantasy world, you don't need to do that. You don't need to have like the I have this special training. You can make it a magical thing where it's like you can make it about the sleeping mind and that kind of stuff because you built this world where that is obviously extremely important. So why wouldn't you incorporate that into the world and use that to explain why the women would be better fighters? Because it's just realistically, if the men and women are all training the same way, the men are going to be significantly better fighters. That's just that's the way it is. I mean, you could put 2 men and women same size. If they're training in MMA, the man's going to be way better.
I mean, if
they're similar athletic abilities and everything,
yeah.
all you strip away all the main differences. Like you just basically take 2 men and women that are fairly similar from a starting point, the man's going to be the better fighter.
Well, I was going to say, unless in your world you've created, they're biologically different.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But they're not in the book we're reading. So in this book,
well, I mean, maybe they are. It's not talked about. But I'm saying when you're talking about a fantasy, you have the opportunity to write in explanations. Because if there is no explanation, and like if Rothfuss was just like, no, it's just the women just happen to be better fighters, and it's like, okay, well then, and there's nothing biologically different. There's no magical thing going on. It's like, well then you just don't understand fighting at all. Like you should have talked to some fighters. Like you should have talked to some women and men, like in boxing or in the UFC, to understand that there's a physical difference, a massive one. It's not a slight one. It's a massive gap.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some kind when you to suspend disbelief. Like that's one thing. Like I suspend it when I watch comic book movies, but it's not necessary to. I mean, you can because I've already accepted that there's magic in this world. So why wouldn't you utilize that to give answers to things like this? So I think. That's why when I look, like, why are they better fighters? Why are the women better fighters than the men? I look for answers in the magic system because that seems to be the cleaner way to go, without making it just stripping away some of the believability of the story. Because he like the way he describes sympathy. It's such a system that he makes it seem believable that it's you obviously have to suspend disbelief. It's magic, but he grounds that magic. And so if he's not grounding why they're so good at fighting, why the women are better at fighters, like if he's not grounding that in something in the world, then it's just like, what are you doing, man? Like why did you like why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you utilize the world you created in the magic system to explain these things? It just seems like it'd be stupid not to. So that's why I look for answers there.
Well, we don't have a clear 100% answer.
No.
At this point, yeah. It is interesting. I mean, it's clearly, well, I shouldn't say it's clearly. It's definitely not just training. It's that seeing what Tempe's able to do, and then applying that to like even what Shehyn's able to do, who's on a completely different level. It's not. Yeah, there's something else going on. It seems, right, than just training and fighting, and especially like you said, with the swords that don't dull. Right?
Yeah.
They don't break. They last forever. And their stories and the mythology that they're tapped into and all that belief. It seems like belief in stories in this world give you power. Right? Because belief in the stories awaken something within. It's not just the sleeping mind as far as I'm concerned. The way that I see it is beyond that. It's sort of, I mean, it's all about stories within stories with this series. And yeah, as far as I can tell, it does much more than just awakening a sleeping mind. It awakens, like, it unlocks the power of the Ruach. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to really pinpoint.
Yeah, I'm curious if we will get an answer, because I mean he's left the Adem now, so like I mean you would think the only way he's going to get more answers on that is if he runs into someone from the Adem in book 3. I don't think he's coming back.
Maybe we get to the tall,
Maybe, but I think if he does, it's likely he's traveling through waystones. I don't think he's doing the same travel again over boat and all that. I mean, unless he just completely glosses over, like I spent 6 months traveling there, but I don't think there's going to be a situation where he goes back to Ademre and is hanging out there again and getting more answers from them. I would be surprised. Maybe he does that, but again, I think if he does, he's just going to pass over the time it takes to travel there.
It does seem a little odd.
Or he travels through waystones.
It does seem a little odd given all the lessons and stories and all the things that came out of it. Seems a little odd that he just dipped back in just to, hey guys.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So but what? That makes me like, I'm not sure that we're going to get answers on these things. It might be something that, we continue to talk about and debate about. He might just, some of these things he's not going to give answers to. It's like you don't have answers to everything in our own world. And so you're not going to get answers to everything. But it's interesting to talk about and to try to puzzle out and try to think of, what route he could go and how he could explain the things. But I don't know if we'll get an answer to this specific question and why their society is kind of exactly, why it's the way it is. But I do think we'll get more answers on the Adem. They're too mysterious at this point. I think he's got to explain a little bit more about why they are the way they are. But
perhaps
I don't know.
It is a ways out there. I mean, just in terms of it does stand out as very different than the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And in that sense, different. And in that sense, it gives him, he comes out of it with some tremendous lessons and abilities and understanding and larger, verification of important stories. So I could see it just being kind of put on ice, or like basically it's tied up and done, but I don't know, maybe not. I mean, I think it would probably make more sense that it's not necessarily. I don't know how. I keep kind of trying to picture a culmination, sort of, for book 3.
I could see he runs into Tempe or something, like that.
Well, I don't. One thing I don't see him doing, but I keep picturing is this possibility is the whole band is together and they all go to the Doors of Stone. It's not going to happen. Yeah. It's just not going to. It doesn't. It's
do
not
the Fellowship of the Rings.
Yeah, it's not his. I don't see that being his style, but I do see a lot of people that we've read about playing a part.
Yeah.
Right. And their part gets played in the way that it's going to get played. But yeah, Tempe and Puppet are just going to start hanging out.
Yeah.
They're going to move in together, and they're going to start a bed and breakfast. And,
yeah, they all meet up. He calls everybody he's hung out with. They all meet in the same place, and then they hang out and make a plan together. And they all talk about everything out in the open. Kvothe tells all his secrets.
I think Tempe and Puppet's actually not a bad mix because Tempe uses a sword with wood. He'll make puppets for him.
Rothfuss spends 200 pages where he sits every character down in a room and then just has Kvothe and all the characters ask questions and give explanations to explain all the different secrets.
They do a real world thing where they just do an individual interview with the chronicler just to verify stories. So we're finishing up the story.
They just each person takes a turn in a chair and they sit there and everybody gets to ask that person questions. Kvothe tells all about all the bad things that's happened to him. So yeah, that's how he's gonna give all the answers.
Oh, you know what I do like about this is every character gets to be like, wait, what do you say? No. That's not how it happened. Yeah. This fucking guy. Yeah. And Florian sits down and she's like, no, absolutely not. Did this happen?
No, he was terrible. Terrible. He thinks I suffice? Well, guess what? You did not suffice. It was not nice. It sucked. Immediately I knew you were a virgin. I knew when you came running up with your stupid cloak on, I was like, yeah, he's wearing a cloak. He's clearly a virgin.
You didn't know where things went? Oh, man.
It's like, that's not it.
That turned into a really funny idea. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, the tell-all, right? Yeah. That's what it ends up becoming. Well, but I did talking about getting the gang back together. I love this description of Bichette.
Yeah.
Approaching. Very Grey Dalsenti, right?
Yeah. She does. Her and Grey Dalsenti would be a good pairing. I think they match up perfectly together. Yeah. She comes up. She's, the first thing I noticed was that she didn't wear a sword on her hip. Instead, she slung it over her shoulder, just as I carried my loot. She walked with the most subtle, solid confidence I have ever seen, as if she knew she ought to swagger, but couldn't be bothered. Such a great description.
Couldn't quite be bothered. Yeah. Yeah. I love it. That's exactly how I see Grey bussing cigs and although that duster.
The way he describes that is not this way, but the way I see that in my head is her walking in like Conor McGregor, when he's doing this little fucking arms out thing, just his is way over the top. Yeah, way overstated confidence. Try hard confidence. But,
yeah, completely absurd, man.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how I see her walking in, just over the top confidence, walking in, what are you doing? But yeah, and then when she came closer, I could see her nose had been broken at some point, and while it wasn't crooked, it's not like Denna, the slight crimp looked strangely incongruous on her otherwise delicate face. So I don't think you need to CGI Owen Wilson's nose on her. You could just find someone who's got a little bit of a crook in the nose.
It's interesting to picture her with a delicate face because, she beats the piss out of him. So it's kind of interesting to picture that.
And they're all sandy blonde. You're going to be finding a bunch of sandy blonde little girls that are just annihilating fucking dudes.
Yeah, it's an interesting world, man. It's a really interesting world where they just lay waste to people.
I picture them all like the children of the corn, walking around in that society where you'd walk around, everybody's got the same hair color and the same look, where it'd be like, what the hell kind of horror show is this?
Yeah, well, it's so weird too because and I say weird because they have a focus, right? It's not chaotic.
No.
Right? They have a focus to their, except people are having sex in the grass all of a sudden. You just come around a corner and people are just boning. That's not necessarily chaotic, but a little different to get used to.
It's got a Nordic type of feel to it, like a Nordic, or even, yeah, I don't know any other way to describe it, because they all have such a similar look to them. Like, it's not even quite that, because like the Nordic regions have more diversity than what they described the Adem. So like, it would be very weird if you were walking around and it's the only real difference, like in their hair, even just their hair color, the only real difference is whether it's dark blonde or sandy blonde.
Yeah, and it sounds like they all basically wear linen, right? They're all
Yeah,
just like in robes,
all
and
dressed the
whatnot.
same
Yeah.
hair, same eyes. Yeah, it
They all
would be
just
very
walk around
disturbing.
with. They all just fight on grass and.
Like to bone a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Really enjoy it. Like, I don't know. How many times have I had sex today? I don't know. How many times have I brushed my teeth? Like, dude, I remember how many times I brushed my teeth.
I was gonna say, brushing your teeth that you put
Like,
effort into.
How many times are you brushing your teeth a day that you don't remember? and you're doing that the same amount with sex? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, that's not a good example. That would be more like, how many times have I gone to the bathroom? How many times have I urinated today?
Yeah.
That's something that you do much more often, right? Than brushing teeth. And not necessarily effortlessly, but so often that, yeah, it's hard to count. It's hard to remember.
You might have might want to get that prostate checked.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then so when she came closer, I could see her nose was jacked up. But then, so she said in flawless Aeturan, "You are mine now." "You speak it Aeturan," I said soupily. "Most of us do," she said. There were a few lines around the mouth and the corners of her eyes, so I guess she was perhaps 10 years older than me. It's hard to make and then she says, "It's hard to make your way in the world if you don't have a good grip on the language. Hard to do business." I like that. Like, he's like 16 and he's looking at her. It's like, yeah, she's got a little few lines in her eyes and on her head. Like, dude, she's like 26. Like, dude, she's not got, like, how old are 26-year-olds in this world where they're all wrinkled up? Starting to wrinkle up at 26. Like, I
Is she
see some 26-year-olds. I'm not seeing wrinkles and shit yet.
is she 26? Is that
He's
all
like
she is?
16. He's saying, like, my guess is she's
10.
perhaps 10 years older.
Well, also ask someone. Well, 16's not
Like
that.
mid 20s? That looks young as shit still.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was going to say, though, every now and then if you ask someone who's younger, well, I don't know. I was just thinking, if you
You
ask.
don't really start to notice, like, people are starting to get older until, like, you get to late 20s or early 30s, sometimes into the 40s before you really start noticing people getting older.
Yeah, it kind of depends. Gray hair and wrinkles. I mean,
Yeah.
those are the telltales, and baldness. But there's also, I mean, what I was going to say is, like, not really 16, but if you ask like a 10-year-old sometimes, like, how old do you think I am? They'd be like 80. Like, what the fuck? Like, what is your perception of age? Like, you're just way off. Like,
It's 100% accurate, though. Like, that's why every time I see you, I'm like, God damn. Like, I mean, I know we're the same age, but like, it seems like he's like double me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. That is a young person thing where they look at older people. Like, I remember like looking at people like when I was in middle school or high school and looking at like people in their mid 20s or late 20s and thinking like they're much more adults than it felt like once I reached that age.
Yes, I definitely remember that. 100%. I remember teacher assistants in junior high where I'm like, I'm thinking they're an adult. And then in retrospect, not at all. I mean, they were like early 20s.
On the flip side, once I got to the late 20s and then I would talk to people who were like 16, I'm like, oh yeah, we're not the same.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's also, yeah. Again, yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting.
That experience gap. It's not so much the look gap; it's the experience gap that is noticeable for when you get older. Like, once you get a little bit older, once you get like in your 30s and 40s, and you look at like 20-year-olds and 18-year-olds, they all look close to the same, but then there's a definite gap in experience.
Well, and then, yeah, it's then have a conversation. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
It's a
okay.
massive difference between having a conversation with someone in their mid-20s versus someone who's like 16, 17, 18.
Yeah,
Massive
huge.
difference.
Yeah.
That's experience. I mean, you're pretty sheltered in the society where for your first 18 years, pretty sheltered.
Yeah.
Pretty isolated. I mean, you don't really hang out, you don't interact with a lot of people that are older than you until you get out of high school, and then you start working with people, start working with someone who's in their 40s and 50s, and you start interacting with people of different age groups instead of being just with your peer group for 12 years. That it distorts your ability to kind of adapt at the same pace as everybody else.
Yeah, it definitely does. Seems like a flawed system.
Yeah, I don't know about the advantages of just like grouping everybody in by age and for 12 years. Doesn't seem ideal. Like all my peers are idiotic kids. Like
we're all just
everybody I hang out with is just a bunch of idiot kids. Like, oh, this seems like a bad system. It seems like we're all going to be a negative reinforcement on ourselves, and we're going to end up like gluing teachers' shit to the ground. Or something.
Yeah, all we're doing is fuck around to impress each other. It's like ridiculous. Yeah, you're spinning in circles. Man.
No maturity level with anybody you hang out with. But and then you get, I remember myself too late. Formal respect. I am correct in assuming you are Vachette. The smile tugged back onto her mouth. Vachette returned my gesture broadly, exaggerating it so I couldn't help but feel I was being mocked. I am to be your teacher. I love that. Like, just how much animosity there is with them in the beginning, where they're just mocking the shit out of him.
It seems it's a funny thing to picture also. Like mocking your gestures, like
mocking and gestures,
yeah, you'd be like, "Oh, look at me, you fucking idiot!" Like it's just a funny thing that, like, I don't know. It's I'm definitely not above it. Like,
no,
I stupid shit like that all the time, where somebody says something, you're like, "Oh, you just say what they said, but say it in a stupid voice."
Yeah,
and literally just mocking them for no fucking reason. Yeah, it's fun. It's good stuff.
But then, he goes, what if Shehyn? I understand she was the teacher here. And I like Vachette's like, dude, Shehyn's got more important things to do than to teach you. Like, the arrogance of like the central pillar of their society, like the shaman basically of their society. And he's like, I thought she was the one that was going to teach me. It's like, who are you? Like, who? Why would you even think anybody should be teaching you?
I'm Kvothe the Bloodless.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
Lightning.
I don't know. Maybe no one's told you, but I just got back from having sex with Florian for like a couple of years.
Apparently, you haven't heard about all this. It's kind of interesting to also consider.
Actually, in my travel sack, I got a couple pairs of her panties. Like, if you want to check them out, just
if you don't believe me,
yeah.
It's kind of.
Have you ever heard of Thousand Hands or the French falafel?
Kind of invented that last
one.
Yeah. It's like, Florian's been making fun of you. It is kind of interesting though to consider that Shehyn is Tempe's teacher. Like, I don't know if Shehyn would have a bunch of students, or does she have like one? I don't know if that ever becomes like really clear.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe it's a system where Shehyn becomes his teacher after a certain point. Like, it doesn't seem like Shehyn's like teaching Celine or whatever her name is, the little girl. So like maybe once you get to a certain point, Shehyn becomes like the teacher of everybody. And she kind of, she doesn't like, it doesn't seem like she'd be teaching first grade. It seems like she'd be more like advanced training. Yeah. So graduate studies.
He's like a black belt.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah, and so she's obviously, she's not going to be the teacher. And then she's like, in a general sense, that is true, but in a more practical sense, Shehyn is far too important to be spending time with you. I was quite happy with Tempe, I said. And if your happiness was were our goal, that might matter. However, Tempe is closer to being a sailboat than a teacher. I bristled a little bit at that. he's my friend, you realize. I love that. She's just
Yeah. Oh,
completely
excuse
cuts
me?
him down. And he's like, well, and the fact that you're friends with him is why you can't see his faults. He's pretty stupid too. He's not that bright. Love her like completely cutting out, and she's over the top dismissive. Like we have enough interaction with Tempe. He's not stupid. He's smart and he's witty. He's funny. He's got a good personality. He's quick. So he's not stupid. But they're underestimating him, I think, is what the problem is.
I think what I actually thought was really funny is like, he's my friend. You realize, like, dude, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what's going on here? Like this isn't summer camp.
Well,
bro.
and it would be like someone like I'm sitting there talking shit about you, and someone comes up and was like, "Hey, you know what? Tim is my friend." Like, yeah, I've known him my whole life. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is my society you're in right now.
I say what I want to say.
Yeah.
Plus, she has
Well,
her agenda.
I mean,
She has a certain
it's just
thing
the
she's doing.
idea of like, Kvothe has known Tempe for 30 seconds. Bichette, this is her society, and you're sitting there like questioning how she's talking about someone in her society. Like, hey, watch your tone. Like, shut the fuck up, man. This is my house.
Yeah, it's well, it's funny because she actually does compose herself to the degree, because when he said that, I'm like, I think she'd just roll over him, but instead she's like, well, then as his friend, you may fail to realize his faults, which is actually a good point, like, to point out to someone. But then she also doubles down and it's like, yeah, he's kind of stupid though.
Yeah,
like you.
I mean,
like
Kvothe should have been like, oh yeah,
idiot.
well, you should hear his jokes about hairy balls. They're fucking hilarious.
Just confuse everything. Even like,
Yeah.
what are we talking about?
Yeah, and then so he's like, I'm sorry I said regret. I didn't mean to offend you. Don't show me humility unless you mean it, she said, still looking me over with narrow eyes. Even when you make your face a mask, your eyes are like glittering windows. I like that aspect too, because that is an interesting thing to have in there with Bichette, is because so many people comment on the fact of how they can read Kvothe's emotions through his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And she's immediately reading him through his eyes.
It would make sense too. Also in this world, I mean, they're more observant. It seems, as because things stand out so much in these particular ways, especially given they don't typically look each other in the eye. But yeah, I like that, just in the sense of the character calling him out. This would be a situation where he would be called out, and the fact that she's not putting up with any bullshit. And from the get-go, his first instance of trying to bullshit her, she's like, no, fuck that noise.
Yeah. And so then he tries to apologize more earnestly, and he's like, I would rather have you think well of me. And she's like, I would rather have reason to think well of you. I love that. I love that line. But then he's like, Tempe called you the hammer. Why is that? That is my name, Bichette, the hammer, the clay, the spinning wheel. She pronounced her name 3 separate ways, each with its own cadence. I am that which shapes and sharpens or destroys. Why the clay? That is also what I am, Bichette said. Only that which bends can teach. Which we do see that. I mean, she adjusts her opinion of Kvothe. She's always analyzing him, and she's, sometimes she grows closer, grows more trust, and then she pulls back when she sees other things. So she's got a nuanced take on her opinion of Kvothe. She's not just going with just the initial interaction. She gives him an opportunity to kind of win her over or lose her.
I also do like. So when they say, so a couple things, they say pronounce the name a few different ways. We get that with say Sarah, but I know that's a sword and all, but it's basically 2 different sounds of way of pronouncing one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It seems. So they put a lot of emphasis on, again, it's like one word. They're describing a thought or a concept that all 3 sort of complement one another, but then what would be the word? build out of one another and also have different facets to them.
Yeah, it's similar like the when they speak as far beyond just names, when they say like beautiful, you leave the other person to interpret the meaning of your word. But like with Madra or Vished, or like these things have multiple meanings to them, and so that just seems to be part of their culture, is with the naming, with the way they use. There's a lot of implications, or there's multiple meanings to words. It's a nuanced, it's a different approach to language than our world. I mean, there's some similarities. Obviously, it's got to be grounded in something we recognize, but it's a little bit different.
Well, I like the idea of, in particular, you're describing a person, and people are multifaceted, right? They're round. They have multiple layers to them. So the idea of hammer, clay, spinning wheel, they describe it as, or she describes it, I'm that which shapes, sharpens, destroys. So it can do all of these things. Only that which bends can teach. So it's like, the way a wheel works in itself is, it can't work unless it bends, right?
Yeah.
So like, I like it's same with clay. I like that sort of acknowledgement of the multifaceted way that people are, but also that the world works in itself. It's kind of like it's that Lethani sort of approach, to some degree, of like, acknowledging. I mean, it's not the sleeping mind, but acknowledging that there's no hard set way to do things. I mean, isn't that what the Lethani is? It seems it's very open ended, right? It's open to interpretation, which is interesting because there's still, when it's not, right? It seems to be glaring when it's not of the Lethani, but so many things could be. I like the concept, man. It's a really
well,
cool...
yeah. I mean, the Adem are fun to talk about because of how everything is kind of open to interpretation, and it's hard to pin anything down because of how the Lethani is built into the world and like what it is. It's like talking about the Force or something like that, where you just can't pin it down. So it gives opportunities to kind of explore it in different ways. Whereas if there's like a definitive answer, then that's the end of the discussion. You have the answer. There's so much open to interpretation where it allows you to kind of explore their society and explore the meaning of their words a little bit differently, which is good. I mean, he expressly says that about the world, and then he wrote it in a way where it is that way too. It's not he said this is the way it is, but then he also wrote it in a way where it is that way.
Yeah.
Through demonstration.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then he's like, he talks about how he was excited that now he was going to finally be able to speak to someone who could communicate better. So talking about the limitations with Tempe, and he couldn't ask him questions because he knew he wouldn't even know how to what the question meant, or even if he did, Kvothe wouldn't understand his answer. So the communication gap was much bigger with Tempe than it is with Vished.
I love her her acknowledgement / response. Yeah. Knowing how to communicate is also the way of a teacher. Now go give me a stick so I can kick the shit out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of communication, I'm going to communicate quite clearly what the lesson is here. Get a stick and I'm going to beat you with it. And we'll see if you pick up on the lesson through this communication.
It's so great.
It's such a gangster fucking thing to say that. Like, knowing how to communicate is also the way of the teacher. Now go get me a stick. See if you figure this out.
Dude, it's
see
so
if I
great.
Can communicate this to you.
It's so great too, because when you kind of go back and then realize like how she was kind of speaking to him, she's playing him, man, like to a great degree. She's not, but she is, you know what I mean? Like it's really funny to like then, because that's what happened to me when I read
but it's a gangster test, and there is some honest sentiment to it as well.
Well, and that's again, just reread payoff that you get if you've read through it before. When that line comes up, now go find me a long piece of wood, you know exactly what it's for. Now on the first read, you might instinctually think, oh, it's like go get a branch off the birch tree, kick the shit out of me. Maybe you think that, or like in the back of your mind, but you're not you're not, locking into like, that's what this is. When you know that's what this is, then everything you just read and kind of the fact that she was playing this side of like, oh, so maybe there is something happening here. There is, he's in a better place than, the hammer, raining down on me. But no, she was just kind of playing you.
Well, and I love that he comes back similar like when Elodin sent him off to get the acorn or the pine cones or whatever. Like he gets the perfect ones, and then like Elodin is just walked off.
Yeah.
And then like he comes back and to her and he's like, you said only that which bends can teach, so I thought this would be appropriate. And she's just super gangster with that. It'll serve for today's lessons. Then she just starts cutting away the little knobs off of it. And I love the sound where he's like holding the willow branch in one hand. Vachette swung it back and forth, making a low whop whop noise as it skimmed through the air. It's like, I can feel that. Like, if you've swung a stick around, you can feel that whop whop. And like, so just the idea of like something making that noise that whips you in the back, like, ooh, man, that would hurt.
Yeah. Pretty vicious. Yeah. The sounds are great. The vip, vip, like that, man. Yeah, you can kind of feel it. That snap, and then the welt on his face. Yeah, that whole thing is really visceral or like palpable. The it's so funny too, man. Like when he comes back, this is when I see Kvothe as like, we kind of make fun of him with the cloak, and when I make fun of him standing up with his pipes. But like you said, only that which bends can teach. So I thought this would be appropriate. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up, man.
Yeah.
It's like he's that proud student.
So you got a little something on your nose.
Yeah, exactly.
Brown.
Exactly. Where it's like, yeah, I get it, dude. You were listening. Fine. Just give me the fucking thing.
You're super clever. You're so clever. Now give it to me, and I'm gonna hit you as hard as I can with it multiple times.
You repeated back to me what was just said. Oh, I'm so impressed. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. Like and whenever he's heavy-handed like that, that's when for me it's just like, oh, fucking idiot. But it's perfect because he's setting himself up for vip vip, wop wop, get slapped.
Yeah, and I like too, where it's like now that she was closer to me, I noticed that while Vachette wore the familiar mercenary reds, unlike Tempe and many of the others, her clothes weren't held tight with leather straps. Her shirt and pants were bound snugly to her arms and legs and chest by bands of blood red silk instead. Curious if that has any kind of significance. It could just be like something to do with like the 99 stories, because the girl threw just the thread at him when he shot her with the arrow. She tosses the thread at him that floats through the air and then hits him in the heart. Whereas she's
silk
just
or something.
Yeah, it was just like a silk thread.
Oh,
she did it with like a ribbon, basically. And so I'm curious, like if that's just a low key honorific, honoring that story and that heritage, if that's what that is about. Like when Vachette hears the story, the 99 story, she's probably heard it a bunch of times, but she's breaks down into tears when she hears it again for who knows how many times. So it's obviously something that has an impact on her. I'm curious if that's why she used the ribbon instead of the leather strap, or if there's something else that, we won't know until we get to book 3, why she's using it. But because it's weird that why would he mention it if there's nothing to it? But that's the only thing I can think of, is that it is to do with like the 99 stories and her showing respect to it.
Yeah, that's a good point, because why else mention it? We kind of already have a picture in our mind of how they dress. You could try to do it to give them variety, but who really gives a shit? That doesn't really add much. Two things. Other than, it's good to be able to picture stuff, but I forgot. Like again, those stories, that 99 stories stuff is so great. Just the idea of a thread, and like you literally are able to have it go where it's supposed to go across a cliff, like big
showing
chasm.
like
That's
I could have
insane,
killed you
dude.
if I wanted to, but
it's man, that's some really impactful shit.
But yeah, she met my eye. I'm going to hit you now, she said seriously. Stand still. Vachette began to walk around me in a slow circle, still swinging the willow rod. Whop, whop. She moved behind me, not being able to see her was worse. Whop, whop. She swung the rod faster and the noise changed. Vip, vip. I didn't flinch. Yikes. That would suck.
The anticipation. I'm going to hit you now. Stand still. Then walk around. You're just hearing that. Dude, the anticipation would be just... it'd be so brutal. Like, you'd just be like... your whole back would be flexed. At least I would think.
And she hits him twice. And, once on each arm just below the shoulder. Vip, vip. At first, it merely felt like she tapped me. Then pain blossomed across my arms, blazing like fire. It would suck so bad. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
At that point, if I'm Kvothe, I'm using sympathy to set her on fire.
Not break the stick, but set her on fire.
No,
vengeance immediately.
Just like my arms are on fire now for you whipping me for no reason whatsoever. Now your whole body's on fire.
Well, she's not. It's not no reason. She's testing his dedication.
Yeah, screw that. You would find out my dedication to not being whipped. But yeah, and then before I could react, she struck me across the back so hard I felt it in my teeth. The only reason the rod didn't break is because it was supple green willows.
Like, there you go.
So fucked up. But
great job.
He picked a branch, the perfect branch for a whipping. Fucking jackass. But yeah, I didn't cry out, but only because she had caught me between breath. I gasped, though, sucking in air so quickly I choked and coughed. My back screamed with pain as if it had been set afire. It's just brutality. And she's like, yeah, look, here's the lesson. You're not welcome here. You need to get the hell out of here. You stole our secrets. Your presence is an embarrassment. It's a complication we don't need. Tells him, like, get out. If you come back, this is the only thing I'm going to teach you. I'm just going to whip you every time you come back. So that's your choices. And she's like, we'll meet here again in an hour after lunch. You'll pick another stick and I will try to teach you this lesson again. If the stick you bring me doesn't please me, I will choose my own. And she tells him, we'll just keep doing this. And then he's like, what will? And she whips him this. And her hand flicked out and the tip of the rod caught me on the cheek. This time I had the breath for it and I gave a high, startled yelp. Bichette looked at me. I'd never thought anything so simple as eye contact could be so intimidating. But her pale green eyes were hard as ice. Say to me, yes, Bichette, I understand. I glared, yes, Bichette, I understand. The right side of my upper lip felt huge and unwieldy as I spoke. It's just a brutal fucking beatdown.
Yeah, just already. And if you've ever had like something like that where you're like your whole face, especially the face, like when you get like a massive black eye and you touch it, you're like, man, what the hell? What has happened to my face? Or like the lip, especially. The
lip's real bad. Like it's
really nuts.
I've had a couple lip things. Like I playing football at school once, had my tooth bust through my lip, hurt. Like, and I was like in grade school, like probably 3rd, 4th, 5th grade in that age group. And I remember like my tooth went through my lip, so it was just bleeding badly. And I was walking off like in complete control. Like I'm a badass, just spitting blood as I'm walking by like this, like it doesn't hurt. But then like soon as like I see it in the mirror when I went into the restroom, because they like told me to go clean it up, and then like I went in the restroom and I saw my tooth went through my lip, it was like full blown panic mode. Like I was like and then I was like a 9-year-old like crying, like what happened? My face. But I held it in long enough to get out of sight of everybody else before I broke down.
Very cool of you.
And then and I also got hurt playing football in the backyard. My brother threw a pass up real high, and I was looking up, caught it over my shoulder, and then like when I looked down to run forward, I ran head first straight into a grill.
Nice.
Knocked myself out complete cold. Like the next thing I know, I was being like carried inside the house.
Did you drop the pass?
No, that was the badass thing is I fucking held on to it, like out cold and like holding on to the fucking wall, like cradled it. Yeah,
clutching it to your chest.
Yeah,
I'll never let this go. I've seen fumbles. Eric Dickerson. Yeah. You watched enough Eric Dickerson games. Now the lip is a crazy one because you ever get like hit with a bat, anything. I mean, I've had so many incidences, but
It
yeah,
blows up immediately.
it gets so big, and then when you're talking, you're just like, what the? It's so even just dental work, when it blows up, or even just getting like dental work in, your gums and stuff. Once that goes numb, you use it to talk. You use your fucking face to talk, right? So when it is, it's so disorienting. It's a very
It's one of the
strange
worst
feeling.
spots. Like if someone punches you, one of the worst spots to get punched is in the mouth because your teeth are not good. You know, like you really those mouthpieces are important in boxing because someone punches you in the mouth and into your teeth, it's gonna fuck up your eating for the next week. It's
Yeah, it's not
extremely
fun.
painful. It sucks. Your mouth gets cut all up when you get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, it's not fun. Not fun.
No. But yeah, and then so he's like, only then did I risk speaking again. What happens if Tempe were to leave? When you leave, she said, stressing the first word. The first, the few that doubt it will know you were wrong. It was wrong to teach you, doubly wrong for him to bring you here. And what will, I paused and backtrack, what would become of him in that case? She shrugged, turned away. That is not for me to decide. And he's like, not sure what else I should do. I returned to lunch, returned to the school for lunch. And he
I like
just,
the. I was gonna say I touched my cheek and lip and looked at my hand. No blood, but I could feel the red welt rising on my skin, plain as a brand for anyone to see. So he's walking. We get that reminder as he walks in, and he's just all blown up.
yeah. And he's sitting there, goes in, trying to keep his face impassive, but he's, keeping his eyes down, just trying to be by himself. And you would have to feel completely isolated in that
Yeah, of
environment.
course.
Like you were just going to get a lesson and she just beats the shit out of you.
Well, more. All right. So playing the percentages. More of the people you've talked to since you've been here think you're a piece of shit, waste of time, you're stealing things, and you should leave.
Yeah.
Then Tempe hasn't really said anything since you showed up. Shehyn's the only one that's like, yeah, it's worth keeping around, maybe teaching him. We'll see. That's
I,
all he's got going.
yeah. I mean, you would just feel completely isolated. I mean, he's like, I was unfamiliar with the culture, barely competent with the language, and the burning all across my back and face was a constant reminder of how much I was unwelcome. It would be rough. And then,
Yeah.
but he's like, but the food was good.
Yeah.
And he's eating, and you get a little reminder too. It gives you a little callback to his time in Tarbean. So like just a little reminder, like this kid's been through a lot to the point where this isn't going to deter him. He's like, I wasn't particularly hungry, but I've been hungry enough in my life that I've a hard time walking away from an easy meal. So I mean, the lesson she's given, this is not the kind of lesson that's going to deter Kvothe. I mean, he's been whipped, he's been beaten bloody in Tarbean for years, living on the street, much harsher conditions than just a whipping. So
Yeah.
he's shows like it's just a little callback to remind you like how determined this kid is.
Yeah, and then he does make it very clear, as we get back to his training. But yeah, old car carrot, she's pretty good with the trolling.
Yeah.
She lays it on for him.
Yeah, sits down. I love it. He's like, well, at least one person here wants to talk to me. And he looks up and it's her. She's like, how do you like our town? She said quietly, her left hand resting on the surface of the table. Her gestures were different as we were sitting, but I could still recognize curious and polite to anyone watching. It would seem to anyone watching, it would seem like we were having a pleasant conversation. How do you like your new teacher? She thinks as I think, that you do not belong. I heard you cry out. It was like a tiny bird. Was it a cry of love? She asked, making a gesture I didn't recognize. Did Vachette embrace you? Does your cheek bear the mark of her tongue? Like, what a freaking bitch.
I mean, he does quite well here, which is great. I mean, and it speaks to his background and his ability. He's pretty good at, well, I mean, he's always been great at fucking with people.
Yeah, and she's stepping into that Ambrose role
Yeah.
and she's like, she's getting into a battle of words with Kvothe, which is not ideal if you want to win.
Yeah.
And she should stick to physical violence. She's got a much better advantage in that realm. But she's like, everybody gambles on when you're going to leave. She's like, I bet that you're not going to make it past today. But if you stay, I win on that too, because then I get to see you get beat down every day.
Yeah, so
she's
like,
trying to intimidate him. Then
the way she says it too. And if I am wrong and you stay, I win in bruises and listening to your cries. Stay.
Yeah.
Fucking bitch, man.
Yeah. And then I looked up at her. You speak as a dog barks, I said, with no end, with no sense. Yeah, and I like that because you immediately, when you hear that, you think of Tempe talking to Dedan. And so Kvothe just kind of mimicking that insult with her.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, and he does. I think he does even speak to that. Like, he learned enough about their culture to know how to properly insult somebody. And he does it quite well. And he does it with the stage whisper, right?
Yeah, I know how to make a soft voice carry. We invented the stage whisper. Dude's all about his pride, man. Like in every situation, pride is his thing.
Pride is his folly, I think, in the end, right? But yeah, it pushes him. For sure. But I love it, and I like that little victory. I saw her face flush, making the pale scars on her jaw and eyebrow stand out. And I looked down and continued to eat. The very picture of calm unconcern.
Yeah. And he's like, this small battle, at least I could win. It was a hollow victory, of course, but sometimes you have to take what you can get. Yeah, and then when he goes back to see Vachette, and he's like, when Vachette returned to the small park, I was already sitting on one of the stone benches waiting for her. She's like, lovely, a slow learner, she said in perfect A-turn. Go fetch your stick then. We'll see if I can make my point more clearly this time. I've already found my stick, I said. I reached behind the bench and brought out a wooden training sword I'd borrowed from the school. It was old, oiled wood, worn smooth by countless hands, hard and heavy as a bar of iron. If she used this to strike my shoulders as she had with the willow rod, it would break bones. If she struck my face, it would shatter my jaw. So that's a big gamble.
Yes, it is. Yeah, he came out ready.
Yeah, I mean, it was good reasoning, that Shehyn wouldn't send him to Vachette if she was a monster. Mm-hmm. Like, what would be the point? You could just fucking kill him.
Well, so, and it's really interesting, too, because what comes to mind when he talks about, like, I've been whipped, I've been through this, this is not enough to, what comes to mind for me is, the whole thing with Denna, right? And when he talks about her patron, it's like, how could you be with someone that whips you? It's like, dude, he talks about how he's gotten whipped multiple times, but he's like, there are things that I want to learn. It's literally what she said.
Yeah.
She gave the same reason. Like, he knows things I need to know, or he knows things that I want to know. So I don't remember the exact wording, but that's the gist.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the same she says reason. she needs him for information. He knows things she needs to learn. So
that she can't learn elsewhere, basically. Yeah. So and who knows what that is exactly? It's not something. It sounds like it's different than what Kvothe has learned thus far. So
yeah, I mean, seems magic. I mean, she seems to be learning magic from him.
Yeah, and a different sword. So, yeah. But I mean, again, it speaks to Kvothe's blindedness at certain times, where he's just completely blind to the reality of the situation. Where it's like, I just can't understand it. I mean, his emotions there, obviously, but he's just like, I just absolutely can't understand how you could be with somebody that would do this to you. It's like, dude, look at you, man. You're getting whipped all up. Now you're handing her a massive sword that would kill you. Or you're giving this person the ability to kill you. Because I like I will not be determined. I will not be deterred.
And I like the way he presents it to her, because he like shows her. He's like, I got whipped 3 times because I broke some rules, and she just looks at his bag. She's like, "There's more than 3 scars there." He's like,
"Yeah, he did well."
I was whipped a second time. He's like, sometime after that, I was brought up on charges again. 6 slashes this time. Still, I stayed. I turned back to face her. I stayed because there was no other place I could learn what I desired. Mere whipping could not keep me away from it. Picked up the heavy wooden sword from the bench. I thought it only fair that you should know this. I cannot be frightened away with the threat of pain. I will not abandon Tempe after the trust he has shown me. There are things I desire to learn, and I can only learn them here. I handed her the hard, dark piece of wood. If you want me to leave, you must do worse than welts. And he's like, I stepped back and let my hands at my side. I closed my eyes. such a great way to end that chapter.
Yeah.
With like he completely calls her bluff and puts her into the position where like now, if she wants to continue on this path of trying to intimidate him, she's got to start doing some serious damage. He's not going to be playing the pussyfooting around anymore.
This is one of those chapters where if you thought at the beginning, like, all right, I'll just finish this chapter and then I need to go to bed or I need to do whatever.
Yeah.
You keep reading.
You keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't help it. And I did that this time through because I was just, I still, I'm like, I got to see how.
And then as we say that, we're going to stop there for the podcast. This is a chapter you just cannot stop on, just no matter what. You got to just keep going, push through. But yeah, and so that wraps it up for the podcast.
Because we
stay tuned next week.
I like I do definitely like the basically. So bring it on. His whole attitude there. There is the point also where you didn't mention, but when he takes off his shirt, she's like, "Oh, you happen to sway me with the offer of your tender young body."
Yeah,
pretty, but not so pretty as that. But not knowing what their how their stance are on sexuality is kind of a funny little lead in,
Yeah. Well, and I do like that she lets him know that she's into him. Kvothe had to be like, all I heard is she thinks I'm pretty.
Well, not that pretty.
Yeah, but she does think I'm pretty.
No, that's all he needed to hear.
Yeah.
In his mind, he's like, oh.
This is pretty as a pass-fail thing. So.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Especially in their world, it seems very much a sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the standards aren't super high. It's
no.
They don't have a lot of qualms about it. It's like they're just trying to, get some friction going.
Yeah, I'd be curious what they would like if she was completely thought he was ugly, if she'd still be like, still a stick in a hole.
Yeah, let's just get this over with.
Yeah.
Well, isn't there I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought there was a point where she's just basically like, all right, well, we're gonna have to get rid of this thing, so let's go.
Yeah, he gets a boner. That's how they have sex the first time. She's like, you want to go take care of that with me, or do you want to like go off and do it by yourself? It's like either way, it's got to be taken care of.
Oh yeah, and he like clutches his pearls, right? Where it's like, she's like, dude, just stop. It's not that big a deal.
It's like it's just sex. It's like, man, you're like a girl version of me.
No big deal,
especially like me and 20-year-old me and you would have got along very, very well.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the and I guess maybe they have something when people say that second book's all about sex, because here it is again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not here. We brought it up, but yeah.
Well, yeah. But we had Florian, Losi, and
yeah, Bichette and Bentha racking up them partners.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. He's not acquired. Now, on the flip side of that is he is also a murderer. So if I'm going to judge him on whether he's, on character flaws, being promiscuous is not going to be the first one I'm going to pick to judge him on.
No. Well, and also
the murder, setting little kids on fire, that kind of stuff is going to be the things I'm going to key in on first.
I also I don't have any judgment towards him for. I mean, he's a kid. He's it's not like he's. I don't see any of his sexual adventures.
No, I mean they wanted to have sex with him, and he had sex with them. Like I don't see what the issue is. As far as that goes, like I'm also, I wouldn't be looking at this as like, this kid needs to be some virginal kid saving himself for the one type of thing.
Well, and
we like that,
and we've talked about it before as well. If he was with Denna, then he would then it'd be totally different. Yeah,
of course, totally but and he's not a good boyfriend material, so he's not going to be someone who's just going to get into a good healthy relationship, even if it like starts okay and it's going okay. He's got a very unhealthy agenda where he wants to get revenge for his parents' grotesque murder against these immortal godlike figures. Like, so even if you get him for a couple months where everything's going good, eventually that's going to pull him away.
Well, and even to some degree, even worse than that is he's not going to tell you about it.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'd be one thing. It's one thing that's a problem, but at least if he tells you and you're on the same page, it's like, well, let's do this together. That's a different type of animal, right? That's a different type of situation.
I tell you what, if I tell a girl I'm going to war with an immortal god, and not just immortal god, like the scariest immortal gods in the world that everybody shits their pants about, that no one wants to tell stories about. If I told her that that's what I had to go do, and she was like, "Can I come?" Be like, "This is a keeper. This is my ride or die girl."
Well, yeah.
She's literally willing to ride or die.
What if we found out Denna is doing the same thing? She even had the same goal all along.
It would be very frustrating.
Yeah,
it would just reinforce the ideas. Like, man, you guys, all you had to do was talk. You just had to talk to each other.
Yeah, maybe that's. I mean, and that's the key to communicate. That's the key to relationships, anyways. Communication.
Yeah, it's all about the story about like why you should communicate, because you could have been with the girl who would have been your ride or die girl, but you missed it.
That's Rothfuss's theme. He says he doesn't know what a theme is. Well, there it is.
Yeah, there's your theme. Your themey. He knows what he knows what a theme is. He just pronounces it themey. So he's only read the word. He's never heard it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's his whole thing is relationship communication. Therapy, maybe counseling, if necessary, or just talk.
He should talk to someone. He's got a lot of shit bottled up.
Well, he's talking to Chronicler. Are we talking about Kvothe or are we talking about Rothfuss?
Yeah, he waited a little too long to start talking to people. He should have opened up maybe as a little kid. Like, sure, crack that door open back then.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if we were to do it all over again and convince him you could talk to somebody, Ari would be probably a good candidate.
Yeah,
who's she talking to?
Yeah, she seems like a safe person to talk to. Loden probably be pretty good. Kelvin be another one. You could trust Kelvin. You could trust Will. He's got plenty of people that he could trust, like Will and Sim, Ari, Loden, Kelvin, Elxadal. Like, these are all trustworthy people.
Well, with the Loden, it's a little bit dicey because
he's a little bit of a wild card. But I think like if it was something as serious as that, I feel like you could trust Loden. I don't think probably. I don't think Kvothe would trust him.
I could just totally.
Not being Kvothe and just looking at it, I think Loden is trustworthy in that regard.
I could totally, though, just see a Loden, like, he opens up, tells you something, I've never told anyone this. And then within, like, a day, a Loden's talking to somebody in front of Kvothe and they're pointing at him. He's literally telling them, like, his big secret. And they're like, oh, I heard.
Right there. It happened to him. Super sad. Super sad.
Like, and that's all shaped. I mean, a lot of it's just shaped from him sitting on the horns and just being like, yeah, I'm not going to help you here.
Yeah.
And then help him in other circumstances for like
the reason, like, I would feel like, if I was in Kavoth's shoes, I would feel like I could trust Loden. It's like, you see how he interacts with the people in Haven. And
yeah, true.
And then you see it again with Ari, where it's like, okay, this guy is willing to, keep his mouth shut and keep a secret if he feels it's the right thing to do. He's not just some idiot. He's eccentric and he's weird, but he's not an idiot and he's not malicious by any stretch of the imagination. Seems to care.
If there's anyone that, God, man, if there's anyone that would be open-minded to news of the Chandrian, you would think it's got to be him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. Kelvin seems like it would be a good person to. I don't know. I mean, Kelvin would be a person I would not worry about him spilling the beans at all.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would give good advice. He would.
I don't know about talking to
just tell you to rub dirt on it. And it's it's in the past. What about my lamps?
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. Yeah, use it in your work.
Yeah.
That's definitely his thing. Would be like, channel that energy and just bring it to yoga class, bro.
Yeah.
We'll stretch that shit out, bro.
Oh, you're going to love my next yoga class. I'm going to work all that shit out of you. Stretch it all out. Right out of your system.
That's a good...
Bro, you should have told me, man. You could have been going to the hot yoga. We sweat that out. All those bad vibes. Sweat them out. Like, you just got to let your hair down, Kvothe.
So it doesn't fit his personality. Like the namaste. I love it, like picturing him in Zubaz pants and doing a fucking Indian style fucking pose.
Like next thing Kvothe knows is like Kilvin's like got him his legs spread across 2 chairs and he's like pushing down his shoulders. Like, no, just get into it. It's like, you're splitting me in half. It's like, no, you'll understand. You'll reach the zen when you get down into a split. Just make it happen. My muscles are tearing. Stop it, Kilvin.
Hips cracking.
It's like, you're probably not thinking about your parents, though, right?
See? Yeah. That's how you get there. It's all, it's just like searing pain throughout his entire undercarriage.
But yeah, so next week we will get into the second half of this. Vachette will admit that she was testing him to an extent, and she will start to begin his training. So he's going to get into the training part of the Adem storyline.
Yeah, is that kind of, what else? Is that it? Is that all?
I mean, that's the next handful of chapters is his training and getting to know the Adem. Yeah.
It's so great. It's really nice for me to do these again, because when we started the podcast, I reread the books, but it's been a minute, and going through a lot of other stuff that I read for classes and stuff. And
it's a different experience too when you go through the books and you take notes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of slowing down the process, which
you don't skip over things.
Yeah.
You don't miss as much. I mean, you still miss a couple things here and there, but for the most part, you don't miss things that you want to talk about. You can pinpoint them, and you're not skipping over words and sentences.
Well, and again, I mean, it goes back to what, like, the biggest compliment for these books is just like the repay reading is unlike anything that I've had in other books. Well, a lot of times, I don't know how many times I've mentioned it, but a lot of times with other books that are some of my favorite books on rereads, you see how they got there, and you see like, oh, so this was kind of how this got pieced together. And then, certain authors able to use like kind of even the reader's subconscious mind, and then weaving things through visually, then also on psychological level, and then those things piecing together later in the books. But this, it's layered within those aspects, but then vastly more. That things, when we talked about so many times, things that there would be no reason first read through, you would think this is going to go anywhere. Yeah, there's a reason to attach it to anything else. Yeah, until the next time's through, and then you're like, oh shit, look at this little Easter egg you put here, and that little thing. And
it's similar to like rewatching American Pie. Same feeling.
Well, I was going to say, and then you get to find in the subtext things like the hot yoga class.
Yeah.
That are in the subtext. They're implied, they're not explicit. Like, all these, the things like the boy band and, Ambrose and Kavo's slam jam poetry
and Jack in the Box, Grey Dalcenti, the Lone Ranger and Tonto, the Mario Brothers theory. Like, I mean, there's so much stuff in there that, you can't find it. You can't even find out rereading the books unless you listen to the podcast, because nobody else has figured these things out. These are not things that other people talk about. They're missing them.
Whoa. Well, they're not reading close enough.
No, we make it pop and make it sizzle. We're the only ones that can do that.
They're just kind of simmering.
Yeah, they just simmer. They're like a lukewarm, like you left it out in the sun too long. Is
that what Tony Tomato's doing?
Yeah,
Tony
Tony Tolato. He's like milk on a hot summer day, and that's been sitting out in the sun too long. That's what his podcast is.
All chunky and sour.
It's all curdling and gross.
It doesn't sound good.
No, I don't understand why he's got like 60.5 million listeners.
Rounding up there.
Yeah. Although, I think by this point, we probably should upgrade it. I think we're probably closer to 100 million by now.
Whoa, that's a big upgrade.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
Haven't been checking the downloads. This is just my gut feeling. Pretty sure about 100 million.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah. So,
momentum.
Yeah. Rocking it up the old chartables. But yeah, I think that'll wrap it up this week, and we will be back next week with more of the Adem.
Right on.
Peace out.